Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. This is our Monday, March 13th, 2023 meeting. If we'd all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And at this point in time, I'd like to introduce the members of the commission that are here this evening. To my immediate right is Commission Member James Fitzsimmons. To Jim's left, to Jim's right is Jeff Cohan, also commission member. And at the end of the table on the right is Jamie Hine, an alternate. To my immediate left is Steve Allenson, who's the secretary of the commission. Next to Steve is David Parent, who is an alternate on the commission. At the lower table is Kathleen Burns, who is our recording secretary, and next to Kathleen is Kevin Pagini, who's our town planner, and I'm Jim Sykes, the vice chairperson. The chairperson. Just gave myself a raise. Our first order of business is consideration of the minutes of our February 15th, 2023 meeting. Any commission members with any additions, corrections to the minutes? If none, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the February 15th, 2023 minutes as submitted.
I have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All abstain? I abstain, and also Mr. Allenson abstains, as neither one of us were at the February meeting. Before I get to our agenda, I just want to make one note. As far as an item that's not going to be heard this evening, it's new business. It's number 6 on our agenda. It's a site plan self-storage unit, 950 North Main Street, Wallingford, Connecticut, LLC, at 86 Barnes Road. So if anyone's here this evening for that application, that is not going to be heard. I suspect it'll be taken up at our next month's meeting. Which brings us to the first item on our agenda, which is a public hearing. It's a special permit admissions building, show at Rosemary Hall, 59 North Elm Street. And Mr. Allenson, if you please read the legal notice, note all correspondence while the applicant gets ready to prepare for their presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Number 405-23, special permit for Choate Rosemary Hall to construct a new admissions building, an underground parking facility at 59 North Elm Street, R18 Residential District. We have an inspection report from our fire department, inspection date 2/17/23. We have a document and letter from Philip Euchre, I apologize if I mispronounced that, dated March 6th, 2023. Correspondence to Patrick Durbin from Kevin Pagini, Town Planner, dated March 2nd, 2023. Memorandum from Aaron O'Hare, Environmental Planner, to Kevin Pagini, Town Planner, dated March 6th, 2023. An inter-office memorandum from Scott Shipman, Senior Engineer, to Kevin Pagini, Town Planner, dated March 8th, 2023. A document including public comments submitted for application 407-22 that was withdrawn. The application was withdrawn. For clarification, not that exhibit. Contained within that exhibit is correspondence to Kevin Pagini from Jonathan Carbuti, dated December 8th, 2022. Correspondence from Philip Euchre to Kevin Pagini, dated December 27th, 2022. Bless you. Correspondence to James Sykes, dated December 28th, 2022, from Mike Glidden. Correspondence to the Wallingford Planning and Zoning Commission dated January 8th, 2023, from Stephen Lazarus. Correspondence to the Planning and Zoning Commission from John Walworth dated January 16th, 2023. Email correspondence from Philip Euchre to Kevin Pagini dated January 20th, 2023. And that concludes that exhibit. Correspondence from Ray Diffley dated March 9th, 2023. Correspondence to Kevin Pagini from Brian Kay dated March 8th, 2023. Correspondence to the Wallingford Planning and Zoning Commission from Nancy Dixon, dated March 9th, 2023. A memorandum from our Department of Engineering dated March 8th, 2023. A memorandum from Janice Small Corporation Counsel dated March 10th, 2023. Correspondence to the Planning and Zoning Commission from Jennifer Hilgen Santa dated March 10th, 2023. An average grade plan. Just trying to see the date on it. It's not a,
It just says March 2023.
it has a date of March 2023 on it. And the set of site plans, revised, received March 8th, 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. And before we get started, as Mr. Benoit is not here this evening, I'm going to ask Mr. Parent if he would sit in on this application. So with that, or sit on actually on all the applications for this evening. So with that, if the applicant would please introduce themselves and begin their presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For your record, my name is Dennis Senaviva. I'm an attorney with the Senaviva Law Firm, 721 Broad Street in Meriden. To my left is Patrick Durbin, who's the Chief Financial Officer of Rosemary Hall. To his left is Brian Kay, who is the Senior Landscape Architect, will be up at the board, the easel, shortly. He's from SLR, which is the project engineering firm. In the seats, we have David Sullivan. David will be making part of the presentation. He's the traffic engineer from SLR. We also have Kevin Smith, who's the architect from Robert A.M. Stern Architects, and will also be making part of the presentation. Just by way of overview, the property is identified as map 134, lot 156 by the assessor. It's an odd-shaped 96 plus or minus acre parcel of land running from the corner, the southeast corner of North Elm Street and Christian Street, south to Center Street. The land area more specifically involved in this application is about 6.5 acres located at or near the southeast corner of North Elm and Christian. And again, I'm sure you know that from the application. The proposal tonight is to seek approval pursuant to Section 4.1C, subsection 1 of your Wallingford zoning regulations. We have filed a special permit application seeking approval for the construction of a new 14,000 square foot building designed to house the admissions office for Choate Rosemary Hall. It also, in addition, there's an effort to provide adequate parking for the new building while remaining cognizant of Choate's desire to develop its properties using best management practices. With regard to stormwater management, the applicant proposes to construct underneath this new proposed building and underneath an extended new lawn area an underground parking facility capable of providing 73 parking spaces for vehicles. And we'll be making that as part of the presentation, Mr. Chair. The construction of the underground one-floor parking facility accessed safely via driveway off of Christian Street. That driveway located about 170 feet east of the four-way stop intersection permits Choate Rosemary Hall to remove around 61 existing paved parking spaces, which are situated along Gunpowder Creek Road, further to the east. This provides benefits to the stormwater management, to the wetlands and watercourse protection and integrity, to pedestrian safety, as will be discussed in our presentation this evening. So it's the proposal is to construct a new admissions building, an underground parking facility, while concurrently removing 61 parking spaces along Gunpowder Creek Road. The applicant is proposing to construct the new admissions building would be LEED Platinum, and we're going to talk about that through our architect tonight, which is exciting for Choate, hopefully for the town of Wallingford, and as will be explained as part of the presentation. Lastly, we're here properly having received Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Commission approval on March 1st at their meeting, and we've confirmed the application's compliance with your bulk standards, including lot setbacks and building height, which again is part of your regulation. The presentation will be in the following manner, Mr. Chair. I'm going to have Patrick Durbin from Choate discuss the applicant's reason for filing the application with an emphasis on campus circulation. We'll talk a little bit about campus parking. Brian Kay will then go up to the easel from SLR, describe the site plan particulars as they relate to your regulations set forth in section 7.4, emphasizing the proposed building location, the particulars regarding the underground parking facility, the drainage report, landscaping, location of utilities, and lighting plan, the general site plan issues that come before you. Dave Sullivan is here to discuss his findings regarding the potential impact of the proposed building and underground parking facility as they relate to vehicular and pedestrian traffic concerns. And of course, as you've seen from your memo from the town engineer, both have been reviewed and reported in that memo dated March 8th. And David will explain that tonight. Then Kevin Smith will present you with pictures and the building materials concerning the proposed LEED Platinum admissions building and the underground parking facility, which for me was kind of a new thing. I was interested, and hopefully you are, about just the whole layout and arrangement of that underground parking facility. I haven't presented one before. Lastly, after the presentation and comment questions from the commission and the public, I'd like to address very briefly the application's compliance with section 7.5 of your regulations, being the criteria that you use to evaluate a special permit. So with that, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'm going to turn this over to Patrick Durbin. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dennis. For the record, my name is Patrick Durbin from Choate Rosemary Hall, 333 Christian Street here in Wallingford. So I just want to give a little background on why we're here before you this evening for this new building request. So as a school, educating students is core to our mission, and attracting those students to Choate and welcoming their families to campus and to Wallingford is a mission-critical function for us. Enhancing admissions was a stated focus in our 2012 strategic plan due to the fact that industry projections from our trade organization, the Association of Boarding Schools, projected a significant decrease in boarding school enrollments due to demographics and changing perceptions. Across our industry, projections have proven true. Decreased enrollments paired with inflation and COVID are just some of the factors that have forced the closing of at least 6 boarding schools in recent years. To best welcome our applicants and their families and to show them the campus, we are planning a purpose-built building centrally located within the core of our campus, accessible for those with disabilities, and equipped with an underground parking lot. Our goal is to obtain LEED Platinum, as Dennis said, which is the highest sustainable building rating. We will also be pursuing a Park Smart sustainability certification for the underground parking facility. Park Smart is the world's only certification program that defines, measures, and recognizes high-performing sustainable parking facilities. And as you'll hear, this is a 2-story, 14,000 square foot building that has a footprint of roughly half that, 7,000 square feet. As we have done with all of our campus planning, we spend many years considering where to place it. And it was obvious that this admission building, which will also serve as a welcome center for our guests, should be easy to find, and it should be in the center of our campus. Throughout the course of the process, we have been asked about our care of pedestrians, our concern about traffic, and our attention to the character of the neighborhood and directing our guests to parking. And I will look to our architects and engineers to walk you through some of those details within their presentation, as we have taken great care in the development of this plan before you. The admission office, as it currently sits within Archibald, the Archibald building, has outgrown the space in which it sits now, which is the old infirmary, which it moved into in the 1990s. By moving the admission function to a purpose-built building, another administrative office, which is our Dean of Faculty's office, will move out of the library and into the space vacated by admissions in Archibald. The library space will then revert back to library and student use. These moves do not add pedestrian or vehicle traffic to the area or to campus as a whole. And Choate's enrollment, that has been the same for the last 20 years, there's no plans to change the current enrollment. In the past, and in particular over the last 6 months, we have also been asked about the school's building and renovation plans, the transparency of those plans, and the goals of this and other projects. It feels important to us to address some of that now in this public forum. In order to remain a top independent boarding school, Choate will need to invest in maintaining and upgrading its physical plant, just as all public and private organizations need to do in order to stay relevant, competitive, and at the top of their respective field. The school and many of its core buildings are over 100 years old, so this is a matter of maintenance, but also relevance. Our prospective students and parents have evolved. They are discerning consumers looking for the absolute best schooling options for their adolescents. And that experience includes top-notch facilities and innovative programs. Many prospective families travel across the U.S. and the world to visit Choate and Wallingford as they comparison shop for schools. Many of those families choose Choate in part because of Wallingford and the school's location in Wallingford Center. As boarding schools across the U.S. and Canada face growing enrollment changes and some of them close, we need to stay competitive and look to the future. Facilities like this Welcome Center are not only essential to our success, but fundamental to our continued existence. And our plan is to not just survive, but to be the very best boarding school out there. We want folks to recognize Choate as a place that offers transformative experiences for young people and prepares them to thrive in a challenging world well after high school. Like all organizations, our resources, facility, and program planning process is driven with the long-range goals of the institution in mind. And we are guided by our strategic plan, focused by the needs of our students, faculty, and staff, limited by our coffers, and stressed, like everyone, by time. However, we are blessed with an expansive and well-cared-for campus in a beautiful, vibrant town. And because we value both our campus and our community, we have and will continue to work with town officials and commissions to steward our resources and to engage in dialogue about our projects as they come to be. Again, our goal is to offer the best boarding school experience out there. As the community has heard, Choate is committed to building with sustainable practices in mind. Over the last decade plus, each of the renovated or new buildings and those that have replaced existing structures have been built with either LEED Gold or LEED Platinum standards. Although this does cost more to do it this way and it takes more design and construction time, we are committed to doing what is right for the sustainable reasons and is grounded in our commitment to the environment, stewardship of our land, and care for the environment around us. And of course, each of our projects has met or exceeded town and state regulatory requirements for water quality management and stormwater management. We push our engineers to use the latest data and technology available to mitigate our impact on the environment. In addition to working toward aggressive sustainability goals, we recycle, we compost, we curtail the heat when we're not in session, like right now on spring break, and we plant trees, hundreds of trees in just the last 3 years alone. As all private and public schools throughout the town and region invest in maintenance and repair and renewal and replacement of existing facilities, so must Choate, which is why we are here tonight. We're not interested in just getting by. We're committed to strengthening our foundation to secure the vitality of our school tomorrow and for a long-term future here and in Wallingford. Consideration of the project before you this evening is simply the next step in this path forward. I want to thank you, the commissioners, for your attention this evening, and to the members of the public for their attention as well. So, thank you. Brian?
For the record, Brian Kay, landscape architect with SLR. As mentioned, we've been working very closely with the town engineer, town planner throughout this process, through wetlands, and as you'll see in front of you, we've responded to as many comments in that March 8th memo, and I'll take you through some of those highlights now. First, I'd like to walk you through the stormwater management. Well, first I'll show you what's going on here. So our building located right here Right here is the access off Christian Street into the underground parking. The highlighted area green here is the green roof. We're also looking at North Elm Street, Christian Street coming down the four-way intersection. And the site is really broken up topography-wise into 3 different levels. We have the upper level here, slightly below North Elm Street. We have the middle level, which is the football field, if you guys are familiar, and then the lowest level where the parking that we're removing is happening. For reference, Gunpowder Creek daylight's here, but it's piped throughout our site in this corridor from the impounded pond right there, pipe, and comes to here. So as far as our stormwater approach, we are decreasing peak flows for all storm events up to the 100-year storm, allowing water to remain and held on site, trying to best match what's currently happening out there today, infiltrating water into the ground. So just to take you through what's happening with roof runoff, the roof runoff is going into a rain garden right out front of the building that'll be vegetated. It's about 3 feet deep. It has an infiltration rate, which we've found out to be about 10 inches per hour. Once going into there, there's a high level overflow. It then makes its way to the larger basin, which is treating most of our stormwater runoff. And again, it's about 5 feet deep. It has a high level overflow and eventually makes its way into the pipe portion down here of Gunpowder Creek. As far as the green roof function, green roofs, as you may know them as this green roof is pretty substantial. It's a 12 to 38 inch profile of soil. You may be familiar with green roofs being like a tray system that have, sedums meant to be lightweight. This is quite substantial, and we're hoping, intends to act just like the lawn that's out there today does. In a small storm event, that water just gets retained right in that soil, and allows the grass and other plantings to grow. In a more medium-sized storm event, you're going to have runoff, which is going to occur down to here and then run off onto the football field. And in the largest storm events, we have under drainage at the bottom of that profile, and that will outlet into the larger basin and be treated the same way. High level overflow coming down to the pipe portion. As pointed out by the town engineer, the major water quality improvement of the project really has to do with the 60 parking spaces being removed, eliminating that first flush of pollutants that could get into the creek. We find that, as well as all the other features that we've highlighted, to be a major water quality improvement to the wetlands. As far as landscaping, 20+ trees are located on the site plan. The rain garden and bioswales are heavily vegetated with native grasses, shrubs. As far as setbacks, one of the comments in the memo on March 8th talks about a building porch right here that was shown over the setback. That has been shifted. All parts of the building are within the 40-foot front yard setback, or outside the front yard 40-foot setback. As far as lighting, there was also a comment in there about light spill. I have submitted a photometric plan so you can see where light ends up. Overall, the approach is very similar to what happens now on Choate's campus. We're just primarily lighting the walkways in and around the building. And as far as the building lights, there are just 4 lights at the doors. Finally, before I give it over to Dave, just to touch on pedestrian circulation. As it's known, this is going to be the welcome center. So the primary function one of the primary functions of this is to start the campus tours that would happen here. This would be with 4 or 5 people, a small family that starts the tour. Just shown off the page here is where that happens now. So as far as circulation, there's going to be no increase. It's just a shift of location. So other than the starting and stopping point of the tours, circulation will remain the same on campus. And Choate has already done a good job of trying to focus pathways throughout their campus to the main mid-block crossings where we've installed the rapid flashing beacons. So once again, just trying to simplify circulation patterns on campus. I'll turn it over to Dave.
Thanks, Brian. For the record, my name is David Sullivan. I manage the Traffic and Transportation Planning Group for SLR. I think for tonight, the best thing is if I go through essentially our traffic memo. For the memo, we looked at things such as the existing roadways, the existing traffic conditions. We reviewed the site plan, the operations, and then we made an assessment of the intersection of Christian and North Elm. Maybe the best way to do it, I'll jump right to our summary, which is on toward the end of the report. So the first thing that's important to understand is the location of this building compared to where this function takes place now. It's essentially across the street. So travel patterns associated with its use are really not going to change except when you get to or from the parking garage. Instead of taking a left, for example, you would take a right to enter if you're coming from North Elm Street. So essentially we don't see any global change to travel patterns in the area. Additionally, there's no change for staff, there's no change in services, there's no change in enrollment, so there won't be an increase associated with this building. So essentially what we have out there today in terms of traffic patterns is what will exist in the future, and goes without saying, but I'll say it, so there'll be no traffic impact associated with this. In terms of safety, we wanted to look at the new driveway location. We looked at the intersection sight distances coming out of the garage driveway. For the speed limits, we needed we had the 85th percentile speed, which we determined to be 31 or 36 miles per hour. 31 is the average speed, 36 is the 85th percentile speed. And that's what we like to look at for sight lines. That means 85% of the traffic is traveling at or below that speed as it passes through this driveway. So based on that, we need sight lines associated with that, which we look at CONDOT guidelines for those speeds. And then we look at what's available, and looking both left and right for the 85th percentile speed, the sight lines are more than adequate. So the driveway is placed at a safe location. The next thing we looked at is the building placement itself. One concern, or not concern, but one thing we like to check is to make sure that this is not creating a visibility issue. The building, as you can see, is set well back from the intersection of Christian Street and North Elm Street, and will not add a visibility issue as you approach that intersection. Regarding the intersection, we did look at the intersection as a whole. We looked at the geometry, we looked at the pavement markings that are out there, the signage that's out there, the orientation of the roads as it approaches. And this is, for all intents and purposes, a traditional always stop control four-way intersection. It lines up at 90 degrees from all approaches. The signage is what you would expect at an always stop control, and the pavement markings for the pedestrians, for the center line, for the stop bars, are all as would normally be provided for an intersection of this type. We did, however, we understand that there has been some discussion and concerns, and we had some recommendations to further enhance operations and safety at that intersection, which I'll get to those in 1 minute. Before I do, I'd like to jump quickly to the memorandum from Allison Kapuscinski, your town engineer, and point out where she talks about the pedestrian traffic. The town, Allison, in fact, got together with members of Choate and the police department, and got together with the Connecticut Training and Technical Assistance Center. We call them the T2 Institute. And they met out there to look at the intersection and pretty much do a similar thing that we did at that intersection. And they had a number of minor recommendations to further enhance what's essentially not an unsafe intersection today. But those enhancements, I'll go through because most of them were similar to what we had recommended. So the enhancements at the intersection, as Allison points out, were primarily signing and striping. In terms of the signage, we both recommended some advanced warning signage of the stop signs ahead. We both recommended putting decals on the street in advance of the stop bars that say stop. So it would just reinforce the stop bar. And
Sir,
one of the-
if I might just interrupt you for a second. When you're talking about the enhancements, perhaps you could just point it out on the map where
Absolutely.
you're, where you're talking. And also, unfortunately, you referenced your traffic memo. Unfortunately, none of the members of the commission, have that. So while we appreciate your description of it, I think it's certainly beneficial for the commission members, in fact, to have that.
Well, I apologize for that, and I assumed you did have it. Nonetheless, what it came down to in terms of recommendations is what I'm going to explain here. So the advanced stop signs would be a sign. You might be able to see that just as well, which is in the back. It's about the same scale, which is in the back of our report, but approximately 200 or 300 feet in advance of the stop sign itself is a sign that says there's a stop sign ahead. Normally you see that where there's visibility issues. In this case, we don't have visibility issues, but it would be a further enhancement to alert motorists. So it's a stop sign set of suspenders, so to speak. But we recommended that, and the T2 Institute also did. There were paint recommendations. We both recommended that in front of each of the stop bars on all 4 approaches, the word stop be painted.
Sir, if you could please, the microphone a little bit closer to you. We
Sure.
seem to be getting beeped.
So in front of each stop bar, the word stop would be painted on the pavement. So it's a further advanced warning and an identifier that it's a stop condition. The T2 Institute also suggested, was not one of our recommendations, but to use epoxy paint. The advantage of using epoxy paint, number one, it has a tiny, tiny bit of reveal, so it's not flat on the pavement, but more importantly, it lasts much longer and will stay in better condition for longer periods of time. So when you have a longer maintenance cycle, it's more visible for a longer amount of time before it needs replacing. So instead of going through normal painting processes. The other thing that was pointed out is that all of the crosswalks to put the tactile warning strips, which the traditional or new style tactile warning strips, as each ramp approaches the crosswalks. So that's a physical improvement to enhance the actual pedestrian crossing. And the last thing that we had that was not part of the recommendation is, in fact, I'll call it another set of suspenders. There's stop signs out there that actually have LED lights surrounding them. So if the town engineer wanted to take that recommendation, that's a third form of advance warning or stop warning. So all in all, this intersection has no obvious deficiencies in the realm of how you would normally design something and how you would sign it and stripe it, but there were additional things to enhance safety that both my firm and the T2 Institute, in conjunction with the meeting in the field with Choate and the police department and your town engineer came up with. So be happy to go further into that. If not, I'll pass it back.
At this point in time, I guess I would ask any commission members with any questions on what's been presented.
Kevin? Our architect will be next.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Kevin Smith. I'm a partner with Robert A.M. Stern Architects. And we're very delighted to be here tonight, but show you some of the things that we've been thinking about for this building. We'll stand up and point out firstly the site plan and some of the things that were very important to my client, which was to develop routes that keep pedestrians off of the sidewalk, so student traffic to be within the fences that now exist along North Elm and Christian Street, and provide a very desire line that really leads around the building to this relatively protected four-way stop. So that's been very important. Wanted to point out the orientation of the building. So its main entrance is off of Christian Street, and its secondary entrance is actually, or exit really, is off the terrace, which we imagine to be the beginning of tours. And we very much thought of this building to be to complement the historic nature of Wallingford and be as if it were a historic building. It's divided into smaller sort of three parts. There's a kind of main house, if you will, a subsidiary element that's joined, and you'll see that in the elevations, by a kind of arcade wing. It has been mentioned there's an underground parking facility. That's one of the ways that we want to improve the environment on the ground plane, more green, and part of that is actually removing the parking that's along the underground Gunpowder Creek, and that goes into this parking facility that I'll point out. Thank you. Inside the building, it's pretty straightforward. The main entrance is there. The ground floor is the more public side that visitors will see. A waiting area and a room for presentations, and upstairs are the offices for the admissions. This basement level is the underground parking facility. It has one entrance and exit for vehicles, and a way for visitors to get to an elevator and stairs that bring you upstairs. So what does that look like? It is meant to be a traditional New England house. It is, it's a white painted brick, which is a kind of tradition that's on the Choate campus, with shutters, slate roofs, main entrance. This is the Christian Street elevation, and you can see that the grade slopes fairly substantially as you move to the east. Keep going here. Along North Elm, you can see the way we have chosen to mass the building, the sort of house, subsidiary house, and an arcade-like story-and-a-half treatment. It does have rooms up above, but because this building is almost 3 feet below the level of North Elm, and across the street, the buildings that Choate now has, such as Sally Hart Lodge and Carrington, are 3 feet above. It's almost 6 or 7 feet. In fact, you can see over the top of this building to the hills beyond. Thank you. And then from the east elevation, this is looking toward the fields, the terrace I talked about. So again, that's Christian Street is on your right. And then finally the view to the south. So as you can see, the big house, the little house, a traditional kind of massing for these kind of buildings. What's interesting is that though it looks traditional, it is, we have a highly performing envelope, so we are able to achieve LEED Platinum, low energy consumption, all electric, no fossil fuels, including the fireplace. There are solar panels within the roof tiles, and one of the features of that is the underground parking strategy. So it keeps the parking from being a source of runoff to the surroundings. And I mentioned the materials, the white painted brick, slate roof, also some wood elements. But the idea is that this is not only sustainable short term, it's sustainable for the long haul. These are permanent materials, so this building will have a long life, which is part of its sustainability strategy. That is good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, unless there's questions perhaps from the commission, that's the main presentation for this evening.
Okay, at this point in time, commission members with questions for the applicant. And I believe, Mr. Fitzsimmons, you like to start off.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since the drawings were up and I have the materials, could you put up the drawing that shows me the entrance to the garage? I want to make sure I'm reading your maps correctly. So that's
So this is the entrance to the garage,
Christian.
off of Christian Street.
Okay. So on this,
Substantial, yes, there's a,
I think there's a better one that you have where you can actually show more of the opening. There you go.
so this is cut, it is actually down, you go down from Christian Street substantially, it's about 4.5 feet below that portion of Christian Street to get to the floor of the garage.
I'm quite familiar with the campus and the road, and multiple times a day. So as I'm looking at this drawing, which is the average grade plan, so the first cutout is a pedestrian access, correct? Which isn't shown there, or am I missing that? I'm just trying to see the garage entrance on this compared to that.
This is the garage entrance. The grade slopes up to this level above the parking facility. So basically this whole space is underground. It's a cellar, if you will. And we have given it a substantial distance from the corner. It's 152 feet to the curb cut.
Thank you for that. I just have a few more questions at this time, Mr. Chairman, but I just, with that drawing up, I guess, forgive me for just asking the obvious. So the football field goes away?
No.
No. Okay.
You can see the athletic field still in that drawing.
I just want to make, yeah, so it's still there, and it's always, there's no plan to relocate or do anything else there, correct?
No,
This
we
is all the
we
upper
plan to
area.
maintain that as an athletic field.
Okay, okay. And then I guess, as a result of that, and as the chairman noted, the commissioners don't have a copy of the traffic memo from November. How many parking spaces will be provided? Because I know that the garage plans to have about 70, and you're planning to eliminate some, but again, I'm thinking of athletic events, football, and certainly events at the Mellon Arts Center. Where would people park? I know your students don't drive there, but visitors do.
Sure, I can address that. So we will have approximately 70 spots in the underground lot, and we are eliminating 60 or 61 spots along Gunpowder Creek, that row of cars. So there's about 7 events on campus that you're referring to the overflow parking, where we have some large events, so Wallingford Symphony Orchestra, Twist, Parents Weekend, Commencement, Reunion. I hit most of them. And those, typically we have on those events over 100 cars that use what we call the bleacher lot, or where the admission building is proposed to go. So in 2019, when we built the new auditorium, Colony Hall, we added a new parking lot that was a net gain of 120 spaces. And so, we will relocate our overflow parking for those 7 events Colony Hall parking lot accommodates most of that, but to a field up off of Rosemary Lane, which Brian will point to. So we actually had Wallingford Symphony Orchestra yesterday on campus. They did a concert, and we have multiple parking attendants. Our community safety officers direct traffic. And so the Paul Mellon Arts Center, can you point to that? So that's Colony Hall, and then the Paul Mellon Arts Center is that building right there. So in the past, when we used the bleacher lot, as we called it, for overflow parking, everyone would have to cross Christian Street. And so we've actually, by moving the Wallingford Symphony Orchestra as an example, and which is true for most of our external events, to Colony Hall, we now provide parking on the same side of the road as those events. That's true for commencement, which happens on our Great Lawn. That's true for reunion. That's true for Parents Weekend. And so we know that for those 7 events a year, and for the 2 town events, both Twist and WSO, we have a plan to accommodate the parking further away, really, from that intersection.
I think there's more than 7 events that need parking, but it's your application. Having been through there, I mean, just football games alone. So the parking garage will be open access.
Yes.
Or is there a gate access? Because what is the plan for the access into the garage? I mean, is it free for all, or?
Yeah. So our plan is that it would be open during, obviously when there are events, but even during normal school days, it would be open. We will likely have an ability to close it, but the operational plan is that it would remain open, just as Gunpowder Creek is, the parking along Gunpowder Creek Road is today.
Until I can get a copy of the traffic report, I think that's all I have at this time.
Thank you. Other commission members with questions? Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, my comments, unfortunately, we did not get that traffic memo, which I think is one of the critical pieces to this application. So I'm just going to ask a couple of questions. Maybe they were already answered in the memo, but again, we did not see it. There were a lot of comments from the public about, increase in traffic. And, to me, it doesn't sound like there really is going to be any increase. You're just moving the location of, the parking to the underground parking facility. my question is, you know, and reading through your material, I guess you have up to 3,000 applicants a year that want to apply to CHOAT. And I don't know if 3,000, you know, come and visit on site. But my question is, you know, what is the traffic count as far as regular, you know, day-to-day traffic during the, you know, Monday through Friday, during, you know, normal school, you know, hours? You know, how many cars are going to be going in there on a daily basis? And when do the, you know, bulk of, you know, your visits occur? And do you get, you know, 10 families coming in? You know, is it during the summertime? Is it, you know, going to have an impact on, you know, the traffic on Christian Street during, you know, again, regular school hours?
So the current plan is that the admission function will remain the same as it is today. There's those 3,000, I don't have the number, I don't know what percentage of those families come to visit throughout the course of the year. You know, the tours are very small, so typically one tour guide to 1 or 2 families. So a family group might have, you know, 3 to 4 people in it, just depending on who they bring. And Kevin, can you point to Archibald on that map? So it's currently in Archibald, which is right where he's pointing. And so we really are just moving the function across the street. So as the tours go out the back of Archibald, they currently traverse all 4 quadrants of our campus today. And so that will be true with this new proposed building. The people would come out of the back, off the terrace, and then head to all 4 quadrants. So that's why there is no increase to pedestrians as a result of this building.
So,
If I may add, and currently I think there's 7 spaces that are striped for admissions parking and in.
There are currently 20 spots in that lot there, right?
So what, you know, the first part of the question was how many, you know, daily people are going to be driving into the, you know, parking facility? I mean, again, it doesn't sound like a net increase, but.
Right, it's the same as today. I don't have the exact number today.
All right. You know, again, going back to the traffic memo, and you know, there are a couple of improvements that were mentioned, which, and I forget the traffic guy, Mr. Davidson, maybe? Sullivan. He actually did a presentation on Northrop last week, which I thought was really well done, and talked about a lot of safety improvements. The couple that you mentioned today were tactile strips and stop sign LED. You know, who is responsible for that? Is that the town of Wallingford? You know, is that CHOAT? Is that, you know, the state? Who's responsible for implementing those safety items?
Dave Sullivan. The decision to do it would be the town. So your town engineer would have to suggest it. They're low-cost items, all of them, actually, and I'm sure Joe would fund those.
You know, again, hate to mention it again, but, you know, without the benefit of the traffic memo, in the past, we've had other applications for CHOAT, and, you know, the 4-way intersection is, you know, always a concern. There's a lot of, you know, traffic backup during the mornings. You know, the students, you know, cross the road. the topics come up quite a bit. And I'm just wondering, what other, safety items, and the one I'm thinking about is there a permanent crossing guard at this intersection?
So there is not a crossing guard at that intersection because it is a controlled intersection already. We do have crossing guards at the mid-block crossings during peak class exchange periods.
So, again, I'm getting to, based on one of the public's submissions, I'm looking at a big traffic backup with, cars and Wallingford school buses in the morning. And again, this is not, I guess, specifically related to the admissions building, but just the overall traffic in that area.
Is there a time of day with that?
Well, with the school buses, it was either the morning or the afternoon. And I'm just, with this building going in, and again, the traffic memo and, the T2 center, and I'm kind of like a definition of that. It sounds like that's some type of, traffic organization that deals with traffic. If they had looked at, the backup in that traffic and had any, suggestions with that, again, I mentioned the crossing guard or whatever, to, see if those school buses could, get through a little faster. I think that was a concern with, some of the public comments.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
So when you're dealing with traffic safety, and more importantly, pedestrians and pedestrian safety, ironically, traffic flow is not one of your priorities. So one of the symptoms of a safe pedestrian environment is, in fact, congestion. The vehicles having to stop, take turns, evaluate when they make those maneuvers. They're evaluating every single time. Even a traffic light, when you have a green light, you don't have the driver responsibility inherent with an all-way stop. So from a pure traffic standpoint and a safety standpoint, this is the type of traffic control you would want, unless the delays were so outrageous that they had long-term residual impacts elsewhere and were creating residual safety issues. Then you would balance those issues. But during peak periods, a little bit of delay is actually a good thing for the pedestrian environment. And I wouldn't suggest changing the traffic control here to increase the throughput. Another way you could increase the throughput is have multiple lane approaches on some of these. What you're doing there is creating what they call a double threat environment. So now the pedestrian, when they're crossing, they're not just concerned with the single vehicle, but that first vehicle may stop, and then they start their way across the street, and maybe the second lane, which is a right turn, doesn't see the pedestrian because of the inside vehicle. So there's things you could do to increase the throughput and increase the operations, but they come at the expense of the pedestrian safety, which in fact now is pretty good out there in terms of the geometry and how it's set up.
Okay. I'm all set, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Cohen. Other commission members? Yeah, Mr. Hine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The current admissions office is in Archbold?
Correct.
Is that correct? And I think that was pointed out earlier on this, this diagram here, where do the staff and visitors to the admissions building currently park?
You'll point out there's a parking lot to the south of the ponds, which is currently not an accessible route up to Archibald.
And how many parking spots are in that lot?
There are 20 spots that are signed for admission, and there are some faculty resident and some open spots. So I'd say 30. I don't have the exact number, but approximately 30.
Excuse me, if I could just interrupt, could you point that out again? I just want to make sure I understand where it is, because there's one parking lot that looks like it has probably 20 spaces where it says McCook House. That's
Yeah.
totally different, or is that what you're talking about is the parking? Just so we're clear.
That is the one, but there's definitely more than 20. We can count right there. 28.
that's
There's 28
just-
spots.
Just to clarify, that's the parking lot that you're talking about, that people that are in the admissions building right now for Archibald, that's where they park. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and that's the lot there's probably almost 340 feet or so from the corner. Is that correct? Looking at your diagram? Okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Hine, I didn't mean to interrupt,
No,
but I just
that-
wanted some clarification. Please, if you continue.
No, that helped. And do you have any sense as to how many people access that parking lot coming from the west each day? Or coming, I should say, coming east to west?
I don't.
I'm just trying to get a sense as to, I haven't looked at the traffic memo yet. But my sort of initial reaction and concern is the change of the entrance, okay? And how that might affect what's going on at the main intersection at North Elm.
So I would say, a number of people would come for day trips from different directions, and those that spend the night would either stay at the Sarley Hart Lodge, which is along North Elm Street, and so they would leave their car there and then walk to the admission office. They would no need to drive. And if they come from an airport or from the hotels over by 91, I assume they would be coming down North Elm Street.
Yeah, and just the concern that I have, and I'm not a traffic expert, I'm just a layperson, so I'm just looking at this, and basically, we all know that intersection is busy, especially during the day with kids crossing the street. And I think here, everybody in this room is probably concerned about student safety, right? And so as I sit here looking at this, my major concern is that we're moving the entrance closer to that intersection that's already busy, right? And so, listen, I like everything that's being proposed. I like the way that you guys are doing it. It looks very nice. But that's my major concern, is the safety not only of the students and pedestrians, but also the motorists, because that's the last thing that the motorists would ever want to do as well. And so that is really my concern as I sit here right now, is the placement of that entrance. I have concern about how this is going to be designed in terms of you have an entrance that's now closer to that intersection that's going to dip down. So when, I'm just trying to think of and I can't picture it, it's hard to picture, right? But a car coming up out of an underground garage closer to that intersection, are you going to have any students or a sidewalk along that, where that entrance is?
Yes.
So you're going to have kids, you're going to have cars coming up, and some people who are not familiar with the campus to begin with. They're going to be coming up out of an underground garage. You're going to have a sidewalk there with students crossing over. And then these people are also going to be trying to look both ways to make sure that there's no cars or students coming as well. That's my major, just, I haven't looked at the traffic study yet, or the traffic memo, but as I sit here, that's my major concern. And I will say, and I know it's a different type of situation, but I know you put those blinkers, the blinking lights on North Elm, which was very nice. I got to tell you, I don't find that it helps, if I'm being honest. I think what would be most helpful, and I only raise it because I'm thinking of this intersection as well, what is most helpful is to put better lighting on each side of those walkways, because at night, you can't see. I mean, I approach those intersections knowing that there may be a student there, and I don't see the student until they're out in the road, even with those blinking lights. Because I don't know why, sometimes they go on, sometimes they don't. But at least if you had adequate lighting before the student got there, you could see the student approaching. And for some reason, I mean, I don't see it, and I get nervous about that intersection as well. Now, granted, there's stop signs, so one would hope that people would stop and look both ways. But nevertheless, I mean, it's really the safety of the students and the motorists at this intersection, and my major concern is moving that entrance closer, and I just want to be sure that we're doing things in a safe manner as well, and I think that's everybody's.
So I just want to address the lighting piece, and then I'll turn it over to the traffic engineer to talk about the traffic. We worked with Wallingford Electric Division to upgrade the lights along North Elm Street to increase the brightness. And when we worked with the town engineer to consolidate the crosswalks, the 3 along Christian Street down to 1, and added some additional granite fencing to to keep the kids from going outside the crosswalk. We did add additional lighting at those crosswalks. We're happy to take a look. Obviously, student safety, pedestrian safety, and motorist safety we share that concern. Do you want to address
Sure.
that?
I'll address this a little bit because you won't find it in the traffic report. But, one thing that, as I listen to you, what I hear you describing is something you might see with a building wall, almost in an urban environment where you're coming out of a garage and pedestrians are right there. That's not the case. When you exit the garage, you're a significant distance away and there's all this open space. So you're approaching this not in a blind condition. Pedestrians see you, you see pedestrians, you're traveling slowly, and in this particular case, you're coming uphill a little bit, which is also a benefit. So I think some of that, all of that really should not be a concern. It's not unlike most of these driveways where as you approach it, you have the visibility to the crosswalk and the pedestrians have the visibility to the car exiting. So it's not a unique situation. We're not creating a new wrinkle in safety on campus with the location of this driveway. The other thing is, the distance of 150 feet or so, from a pure planning standpoint, that's kind of like the magic number. What you want to avoid is being too close where turning maneuvers into or out of are affecting the other intersection. So at 150 feet, this intersection will essentially function independent to what's happening here. So what's happening here is, and the safety of this driveway is, do you have proper visibility to what's happening here? And do you have proper visibility for the speed of the traffic approaching you, which is something we did check. And in fact, you do have the visibility requirements here. So you have the visibility to safely get on and off Christian. You have enough distance separation, 150 feet is plenty that these can operate independently. And in terms of the pedestrians, you have the ability, this will not be like coming out of a blind parking garage. This is much further set back. And this, I don't know, what's the scale on here? 40? Yeah, 40. So this is, 80 to 100 feet before you get to the face of that building entrance. So it's a good distance.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, I'm not so concerned about the distance from the building, but I have in mind, and what I have in mind is sometimes in urban environments, you'll have those underground garages. And as you come up, sometimes it's hard, I'm trying to figure out, one coming up out of that, what is their sight line going to be? Because obviously there's going to be to the left, I would think there's going to be either a wall or some sort of landscaping, and also to the right. I mean, I think of those underground garages in cities, you come up and there's cement walls on either side.
Right, and even if there was, the cement walls would disappear at this point. This is a gradual grade as you're coming up. So in what you're probably envisioning is, in a lot of urban environments, you're coming out of these parking structures of what they call a speed ramp. And those can go up to 10 or 12% if they're covered. And you have the parking, which is relatively flat, but to get from floor to floor and to get out into the arterial street system, you want to make that grade as quick as possible so you can have as much flat area. So you have the speed ramp, what they call. And this is not that condition. I think the change in grade was, what, 4? So, you're looking at maybe 5% grade for this compared to coming out at 10 or 12%.
My next question is, did you do any on-site testing with students or on a regular school day? Did you do any testing as to how many students at present pass by where this entrance will be? What times?
No, we don't have any of those studies done for this particular project.
So I would also just like to add, Brian Kay for the record, the circulation paths that currently exist there for students and everybody walking by is primarily diagonally through the site. Like I said, they try to focus the sidewalks to either that four-way stop or the mid-block crossings. So actually walking on Christian Street isn't really a desire path of students. So currently that wouldn't be a desire path.
And I can say when Ms. Kapuscinski and the police chief and Mr. Wright and I were there with the Connecticut T2 office from the state, it was during a class day. And she observed the intersection. We all observed the intersection during class exchange.
So I guess, and that leads me to another question, and I'm sorry I have so many tonight, but my guess is that the students that walk through what is currently that field there come at a diagonal towards that intersection, right? So now we're putting an admissions building there. And I guess the question then becomes, what do you foresee the change in how the students get to that intersection? I mean, are they going to be coming straight up Christian? Are they going to be coming around parallel to North Elm? I mean, how do you foresee the pattern, the students' patterns changing?
We don't expect them to change because typically people use that diagonal path to get to, say, the gym, which is on that quadrant off that print. And that's why we maintain that access. So a student coming, say, from Mem House, which is a dorm, one of the large dorms, coming through the crossing at the four-way intersection, if they didn't use the mid-blocks. Kevin, can you point to that pathway that you maintained?
That.
Correct. So because that path exists, we don't, and it's not materially longer than going, it's still the quickest way, so we don't anticipate the pedestrian flows changing through that quadrant.
And we've made the slope less. It's now not an accessible path, and we've made it under 5%.
You're waiting for me. At this point, I don't have any more questions. I would like to see the traffic memo because that is.
I think we all would.
Yeah.
We did submit the traffic memo
Yeah,
on November 26th.
no, that's correct.
Okay.
It was submitted, but unfortunately, it wasn't in our packet, and I can't speak for other commission members, but I'm kind of slow to comprehend things. So I appreciate, the gentleman when he went over everything, but I certainly like to have something in front of me so I can look at it, get a better understanding of it. So candidly, I think that's something that the commission's going to be looking for. So, with that, I think it's fair to say that at this point in time, I'm not sure this evening if we're going to be acting on this application because I think commission members would like to see that. But I have just to clarify a few things. In the admissions building right now, how many people work in that admissions building, approximately?
15 or so.
All right. And then as far as the individuals that are going to move from the library to the Archibald, how many individuals are that, roughly?
Roughly 10 or 12.
Okay, so we're not talking about a large
No.
number of people at all. And I would assume, when we're talking about students, walking by the garage entrance, mainly those students would, the way I look at your campus, would be going to some functions, perhaps at the Mellon Arts Center or someone there, someone in that general direction. So is it fair to say there wouldn't be that many occasions where you see a large number of students perhaps going in that direction unless you have, something going on campus where, most of your, at least the recreational activities for your students are, where the hockey rink is, where the Winter X building and all of that is. At least that's what I see when I see the students, how they walk around, walk around the campus rather. If they're not going, to any of the educational buildings, they're generally taking that walkway that's going to be modified. They'll take that down to the, to the other areas. As far as the garage itself, again, the floor of the garage is about 4 feet below the road, is that correct?
At the point of entry, yes.
At the point of entry. What I think would be helpful, if it could be provided to us, is kind of a cutaway where if I'm coming out of the garage, what I'm seeing from the left and the right, is it a hill, a bank, or is it really cut back? So I think that would answer some of the questions when we're talking about visibility coming out of the garage. Because looking at the plans that you put up, it looks like there's just a bank there, and I'm sure that that's not the case, although I would hope it's not the case, that could be done. One of the other things that, could be considered, I know certainly in some of the, some of the inner cities, you have at garages, when a car's coming out of a garage, they trip something and there's a light that goes off, a buzzer that goes off, that warns people that may be walking on the sidewalk that, a car's coming out. That's, certainly something, to, at least in my mind, to be considered. I think, Mr. Hine brought up certainly, some very good points about lighting. I would think that to look to improve the lighting, because there's some spots that I think are tough, especially on the, the dormitory, and it's a little bit a ways, from where this building's proposed. The dormitory, I won't say it's a new dormitory, but relatively new. It's in front of the baseball field. There's a crosswalk there. There's not much light there. I think that's something that should be looked at, as well as just the intersection at Christian Street and Christian Street, and I guess it's North Elm Street. Again, the lighting there, to me, that's a little bit of a challenge. And I think it would also be helpful to have, a few more in your orientation with your students, teach them that the lights don't go on unless you push the button. And some of the students are very good at that, but others aren't. And especially at night, that, that creates, that creates a bit of an issue. And again, just one last question. We talk about the tours, at least it seems in my mind, there's 17 people or so that are going to be in that admissions building. That's certainly not a large number there to use that parking lot. I suspect, though, that other people, may use that in addition to people that are, that are coming to take tours of the campus. But generally in a day's time, not sure there's an average day, but how many tours in a day might you have? How many visitors would be coming in, or would you expect to be coming in on a typical or maybe an untypical heavy day?
Sure, I think at most, sorry, I have notes on that. I do want to answer or just comment on having the students press the buttons and activate the lights. We do, we have school meeting every week where we get all the students together, and it is a topic of discussion. Mr. Wright comes in and also talks about it. And this year, we had students actually make a video. It's actually a comical video. I can share it with you if you'd like. But to, again, remind people not just to push the button, but to stop and look both ways, and all those reminders. So we do work with our students, but they are adolescents. They are adolescents.
I'm sure you do. Believe me, I'm sure you do. But I think just to reinforce it.
Absolutely.
I will say, there's very few times where I ever see a student not crossing or crossing where there is not a crosswalk. So I think, certainly, I think most of the students, probably almost all of the students, certainly make use of the crosswalks. But it's just sometimes, it's whether at the day or during the day or, in the evening. So if that could just be reinforced.
So to answer your question about tours, we typically have during weekdays 5 kind of information sessions or tour slots, and typically at most we would have 8 tour guides at those, and that spans between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m.
Okay. Thank you. I believe Mr. Allison, you had some questions, and Mr. Parent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few questions about the garage. It looks like there's 73 spots with 3 handicapped assigned, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Will there be any assigned parking within there for any of the staff?
We typically don't assign staff. A number of the staff live on campus and will walk to the facility.
Okay. There's a reason why I'm asking this. Just give me a second to get there. And from what I understand, after the admission building may be closed, the garage may still be open for parking for other events and stuff like that. My concern is if there's signage for spots for the staff during the day, that spot's going to be made vacant and left vacant because somebody doesn't want to get towed out of there. And so then it's a dead spot. So that was helpful to know that it's not going to be a dead spot.
Correct.
in just looking at the map or the drawing, it looks like there's sufficient clearance if you ever needed to get a wrecker down there to remove a vehicle. I'm not an expert on this, so I just want to ask the engineers.
There is, and
Okay.
that's a normal thing in garages. There are.
I've seen parking before. The numbers looked right, but I just wanted to make sure. Thank you. Is the garage ever going to close, or will it be open 24/7?
I don't know that the final determination's been made on that. We will have the ability to close it, but operationally, it will stay open most of the time.
Okay.
We don't have an intent to restrict parking in there.
Has there been a discussion regarding security and having security if that garage is left open 24/7 to make sure it remains safe and that there's no one in there that shouldn't be in there and no one in there injured in that event? And the staffing concerns that go along with that.
Absolutely. We have multiple community safety officers on our campus that kind of patrol and roam 24/7, 365. Even when the students aren't there, they are there. As we have it designed now, they will have a space in there as well. So those concerns are our concerns. Obviously, as a school, we want to make sure it's a safe and opportunity for, not that there would likely be students down there, but staff, faculty, visitors. And so cameras would probably be a part of that as well.
Okay. One of the things that I would like to see, and maybe you've already done this, but in coming up with the safety plan and security plan and everything else, looping in Chief Ventura and our fire department so that they're aware of the patrolling and standard operating procedure if there is an event that requires them there, because there is only one ingress and egress for a vehicle to come in the event of an issue.
Absolutely.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Mr. Parent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I admire the candor with which your team has made your presentation, although there was one answer that you gave that kind of frankly disturbed me, and that is when we said, well, the way we promote safety is we create congestion. And when you look at Main Street and also Elm Street, on North Main Street, you have congestion and delay when the school is opening and closing. On North Elm Street, you have that congestion and serious congestion every time the classes change, because instead of, while this intersection would be perfect in most places, right? It's not when you have the children or you have the students going back and forth. And having lived on South Elm Street, now living off of Woodhouse Avenue, I find that one intersection on this arterial road greatly deteriorates, affects the travel for most of us who want to go from one place to another. And I find that the fastest way, which I don't like to do, is that if you want to go north, you have to come down, actually take a right on 150 and go down Center Street, and then go all the way downtown to North Colony Road. And where, if it wasn't for those, frequent changes in class, North Elm would be really great. And no matter which way you come, if you say, well, I'm on Center, well, I'll just take a right on North Elm and go and duck the traffic. If you're there, if you happen to hit a change of class, you're going to be there for a while. Something that should take you maybe a minute, you may be doing 5 or 6 minutes. If you try coming up coming up Christian Street from, from the east, you hit the same thing. No matter what you do, the present condition of that crosswalk, seriously impedes traffic in the town. And so when I hear you say, well, we want to do something else, I think, we should be correcting that intersection as it stands now, instead of doing something that even marginally makes it a much more difficult problem. And so, the plans are beautiful. Everything, it looks great. But I'm saying, has any thought ever been given to maybe we could, if you're going to get in there, we're going to start doing some excavation work, maybe creating tunnels so that so the students can pass safely, and then all we're doing, then you're just doing with cars. And that we can handle, but doing cars and children at the same time in an intersection where you really can't see all that well, it's a serious problem that we should be addressing irrespective of the school. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I don't know if you'd like to respond or not. It looked like you were, but...
Well, we have looked at other options, whether it's bridges or tunnels. I think there's challenges that come with those as well. I do want to acknowledge that we have changed our class schedule to longer blocks, and that does mean fewer changes. There was a change a couple years ago that got us off the MYB Rock Hill bus that runs between the two schools. That bus runs, I think, around 8:45. We used to have a class exchange then. We don't anymore. It's been moved to 9:15. So some of that traffic of the buses is between the schools.
Thank you for your reply. Thank you for your reply.
Thank you. Before I go out to the public, Mr. Pagini, any comments that you may or may not have on the application?
I don't believe I have any further comments at this point, but I do concur with what the commission members did state. So as of right now, I do not, but I may have some more later.
Okay. Thank you. At this point in time, this is a public hearing. We encourage members of the public to come speak, voice their, if they have questions, opinions on an application. So I guess I would ask initially for just a show of hands, how many people would like to come and speak? And what we'll do is we're going to start on this side of the auditorium, and then we're going to move to the left. So again, individuals on the, raise your hand so I can start identifying. Yes, we'll take the gentleman in the front, and then we'll start moving to the back. And if your name and address, please.
Great. Thank you all very much. Name is Dan Krober. Live at 391 South Main Street here in Wallingford. So thank you for your time tonight. I want to speak in favor of the application. I am a professional engineer, professional civil engineer. Have practiced this kind of site engineering for about 20 years. I have reviewed the applications. I'll talk a little bit about that. But just wanted to speak in general about Choate, I have worked with Choate in a consulting role. A lot of the things that you all are talking about are fantastic things. I know that Choate puts the safety of their students and of the broader community at a very, very high level. I was involved in a project where we did consolidate some of the intersections on Christian Street, on North Elm Street. Choate went to a great length to look at how they can really funnel their students to the safest possible intersection. So I know that's really important. So I know they'll take everything that you have into account as they're reviewing their application. I want to speak a little bit about the building design, which as a Wallingford resident, I'm incredibly proud of, that we're going to have the highest level LEED certified building here in the town. These aren't things that they have to do. They're things that I think, as a resident, make this town vibrant to be in the center of the Choate campus and to see these beautiful buildings, to see a building that's designed with the best environmental standards that you could possibly meet. So I think that's something that I'm proud as a resident of this town to see them take on. Stormwater management, I know that this is kind of my bread and butter as a civil engineer. I've reviewed those plans. We didn't talk a lot about that tonight, but I've reviewed the plans. I think they're very good. They're well designed. And that's essentially all I have for you tonight, but thank you for your time. Really do want to commend all of you and commend Choate on this application.
Good. Thank you, sir. And we'll go next. I believe it was the gentleman in the gray sweater who was just shaking his head. And then we'll take the gentleman with the robin blue sweater.
Good evening, Joe Mira, 21 Pequot Road. I just want to address the traffic, which seems to be the big concern at this point. Many years ago, Choate, I should say, well, first of all, when we talk about traffic in this town, I know Choate's here with development, but the problem with traffic could also stem from the growth that we've experienced in the town. So it's not only Choate, it's the traffic, it's the public traffic. As far as safety goes, Choate has been in town, I guess, 130 years. They've been a real good neighbor. Everything they've done, it's been on a balance for the benefit of the school and for the town. They do attract a lot of visitors to the town, which enhances our economy dramatically. But it seems tonight, being the traffic, I have to say, years ago when Oakdale was remodeling themselves, and this is before I got involved in many town commissions, I came and I supported them because Oakdale hired young staff, they hired seniors, they were a good benefit to the town. And then a year later, when they did build this structure, driving home with my wife, we were in the traffic jam, and she says, "And you were in favor of this?" And I would have to explain to her, it was for the good of the community. We can't all be selfish and want what we wanted 10 years ago. The community is growing, traffic is there. I think Choate has gone out of their way to minimize the impact of this building. And again, reputation, I think, has to bear witness. They've been a good neighbor, they've done things on a balance, and I don't see this being a problem. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. And again, the gentleman with the blue sweater. And again, just on the right side, after this gentleman gets done with his comments, how many people on the right side would like to speak? So I see one other individual, then we'll move toward the center. Okay, sir.
My name is Steve Knight. I live at 289 Ivy Street. First of all, I'm very interested in the questions you asked. It's amazing the level of detail that your job entails. It's incredible. And you're masters at this kind of minutia, and I appreciate it. I'm standing here in support of the application, primarily for several reasons. One, I'm going to give you just quickly. I've had a lot of contact with Choate as a town councilor, as a Choate parent, as a member of Wallingford Center's board, as a member of Hubcap's board, and I have nothing but the highest regard for everything that they do in this community. I think one of the most interesting statements that I've heard is how competitive their environment is. That in recent years, and I wasn't aware of this, that private school enrollment has declined and several schools have closed. God forbid that should ever happen to Choate Rosemary Hall. God forbid the impact on this town. So when I stand up here, I would like to urge you to keep in mind that this is one of the largest businesses, if you will, in the community. A large employer. They bring in millions of dollars of economic benefit from out of town. They have actually reduced enrollment, but that was 20 years ago, and it probably makes the environment in that neighborhood, as far as traffic is concerned, probably at least the students are not quite as much of an impact. I can also tell you, as having been a member of a private boarding school, a student I should say, that I can't think of a higher priority for these schools than a child's safety. They have taken on a tremendous responsibility. And I'm an admirer of the traffic improvements that they have made, the pedestrian traffic improvements that they have made, and that is doing, no uncertain terms, is a large measure of it is the man that is their operations chief, who used to be our police chief. So I have a lot of confidence that Choate is doing every single thing possible to maintain the safety of every single student. And that may, and probably does, include some discipline if they get out of hand. This is an enormous responsibility. 600 plus boarders of teenagers. My hair is already white, so it would go twice as fast if I ever worked there. I'm interested in the environment that the care they've taken. The care they've taken is extraordinary as to water runoff. What they've got planned and the redundancy of all the plans that they have is quite commendable, and as well as the architecture. They are trying to maintain the New England character of their environment, of their buildings, so that they don't adversely affect the neighborhood. They've been here for 130 years. It's a remarkable community that we have in our midst. And I hope you will find this admission building, Welcome Center, a welcome addition to Wallingford. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I'll go with the gentleman in the back.
Robert Avery, North Elm Street. Robert Avery. And I go through that intersection multiple times a day. And I can't believe that you're telling us that people from out of town who have never been here before and are going to try to find that parking garage and find that entrance is not going to back up traffic and cause problems. Then there's, they're smarter than I am, because I can't see that happening. I see it causing a problem at that intersection. And then if they're doing that and there's a class changing, it's going to back up down to my house. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I think that maybe concludes everyone on the right side. Is that correct? Now we'll move to the center. Those individuals who would like to speak in the center aisle, please raise your hand. We'll start with the gentleman right on the end, please.
Hi, I'm Richard Cromble, 528 North Main Street. I have some concerns and some suggestions with regards to both pedestrians and vehicular traffic in and around Christian Street and North Elm Street intersection. This is a and I guess I can break it down into two buckets. There's the during construction period, and then there's the more permanent period after the building is up, assuming that this moves forward. This project, from what I understand, is going to take several months. It's not 90 or 120 days. It's going to extend for a while, and from the time the first shovel hits the ground until probably all the finishing touches are put on the buildings. I was surprised to hear a little while ago that there isn't a crossing guard at that intersection. I can remember from years back going through there and seeing a crossing guard and thinking that was a great idea, especially when classes are changing, because students, tend to, take turns walking across the street while they're watching their cell phones, randomly. And if you can have some sort of, especially at class changing time, if you can have some sort of controlled, pedestrian throughput, that intersection, I think makes a lot more sense, especially if you have construction going on. You're going to have additional activity, and I think for the safety of everyone and to allow vehicles to pass at times, I think having some sort of crossing guard there would be wise, both in terms of the safety of the students as well as, letting drivers get through there in some reasonable time frame. I also see a much increased volume of traffic during construction period. You're going to have contractor vehicles of all sorts. You're going to have heavy construction equipment that's moving in and out. And I think that's only going to exacerbate the congestion at that intersection, which occurs during various times of the day. I think there needs to be some sort of restriction. If you're going to have this going on for several months, perhaps cars or vehicles exit and enter away from that intersection. So if you're going out, let's say, the Gunpowder Creek Road or somewhere in that area, you move east up Christian Street and out to East Main. If you're using the North Elm Street side, perhaps you're coming from Center Street and you're going into Choate's existing maintenance driveway and working your way through campus, or perhaps some other dedicated path. But again, to keep those additional vehicles, especially the heavy ones, out of that intersection. And again, because of all those additional vehicles, that I come back to the crossing guard for the purposes of the students, just to keep everything safe and to keep traffic moving. So the more permanent items. If I'm doing my math correctly, the garage is supposed to accommodate about 73 cars. I would think it would be in Choate's interest to dedicate some of those, mark them for visitors. If you have a visitor approaching the campus or coming to the campus, you want them to be able to get in to that admissions building. So if you have 73 and you have 20 spaces that are currently at Archibald dedicated to admissions, that leaves about 53 spaces that might be available for the general public coming to events on campus. And I guess those 53 spaces are going to replace about 60 spaces on Gunpowder Creek Road. So there's a little bit of a deficit there that I think, might be addressed. That intersection also is a main thoroughfare, whether you're going east-west through town or north-south. To have the entrance to the garage about 150 feet off the intersection might work good on paper, but when there's congestion at that intersection, traffic backs up. I mean, I've seen school buses waiting to cross, going across Christian Street, and you might be trying to pull out of that garage into traffic. It might just not be, look left and right and pull out. So again, I raised the congestion issue both for traffic and also for the student safety. Also, that lot, the overflow lot, as it's been called, has been used in the past. Choate's always been very generous to let people use it, whether it's events that are going on at the chapel, whether it's the Wallingford Symphony, whether there are other events on campus where you need the overflow parking. Unless you come to campus knowing that there's additional parking, now you have to drive around Christian Street and come in through the garage and then walk, let's say, back to the campus where the symphony plays or the chapel is located. I think the easiest thing for people to do is to pull onto Curtis Avenue and just park. You find a spot the closest you can to access your event. And having lived in that area, I lived on North Elm Street for 30 years, that area can get pretty congested at times. Traffic, backs all the way up or backs all the way down when it's parking down North Elm Street. I just, am a little concerned for the residents that live on Curtis Avenue and what they're going to do if suddenly, they pull out of their house and, to run an errand, come back and find there's no more parking on the street. So I don't know if there could be some restriction perhaps on parking to, maybe one side of the street is a neighbors only. Something that permits those people who live there to still have easy access to their homes without having to walk a considerable distance when events are going on. Thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts.
Good enough. Thank you, sir. And again, the gentleman, or the individual that was just, I guess, sitting to the right of this gentleman that just spoke, I think you would be next.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Phil Euchre, live on Curtis Avenue. I wanted to begin by just saying that I'm not opposed to a new admissions building. I'm just very opposed to this location for this new project. I wanted to begin, I had two quick questions that I could hope could get addressed. One was with regard to who would be parking in the garage. A lot has been made about simply relocating admissions across the street to this parking garage, but we're talking about 25 spaces, I think, in the admissions over into this 70-space parking garage. And we're eliminating 60 spaces along Gunpowder Creek. To the best of my understanding, the 60 spaces are used currently for day student parking. At least it was when I was a former employee there. And I see that lot along Gunpowder Creek regularly filled all the way up. So if we're eliminating those 60 spaces, who is parking in those spaces currently if it's not admissions parking? And where will they be parking? Will they be parking in the garage? If so, I would have concerns about young drivers entering and exiting this garage. Secondly, quick question just popped up. Someone asked about the football field and whether it would be staying there, and Mr. Durbin replied that they have intended to keep it as an athletic field, but I hope he could clarify whether they're intending to keep it as a football field and not just an athletic field. I believe I've heard that there are some additional plans for near development in the future of a new football field.
Yeah.
Maybe just let the gentleman finish with his questions, and then we'll
Okay.
get the response for you, sir.
Thank you. And then additionally, for the commission, as you saw, I submitted 4 documents, and I could tell from your questioning that you had looked at several of those, but there was one document in particular that I didn't hear any discussion about, and that's the compliance with the height requirement. I had pursued this question with Mr. Pagini, and on Friday he forwarded me a diagram from Mr. K, and unfortunately I wasn't able to submit it earlier because I just got it Friday. So if I could, thank you. So the portion of the diagram on the left, I was concerned about the height of the building, is the portion that was submitted to show the building to be 30 feet tall. But it shows only a portion of the building. Excuse me. And I believe to measure to the top, the peak of the roof, which was in the part I added onto the right. And then, of course, that was a different diagram, a drawing that was submitted by the applicant. I just completed the picture. It really looks like it's over 30 feet tall. So without having heard any specifics or without just being told, yes, it is 30 feet tall, I'd like some verification that we're not passing something that might be out of compliance. And then I guess finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't do a little call out to my 247 supporters on Facebook who responded to a poll saying they would oppose this location as well. That was 247 compared to 37 who said they would support it here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And if you gentlemen could, before I go to the next member of the public, address the comments concerning the the parking garages, who's going to park there, and also at the Gunpowder Creek at those 62 spaces, who's parking there now, and then where would they park, and what impact that would have on the parking, if you would.
Sure. So a comment about the 20 spaces for admission that are currently in the existing lot. Those spaces will become unreserved for admission. So we will, this is a net add to parking because we're adding 73 spaces, taking away 61. We have 20 reserved admission spots today, and we will have that in the future. So I just wanted to clarify that point about what the gentleman who said there would only be 53 net spaces. So I just wanted to clarify that point. Right now, it's a mix of day students who commute, do park in Gunpowder Creek, as well as staff and faculty who may be driving to the pool or other uses. And right now, the plan is for some of the day students to park in the old admission lot, those 20 spaces that are freed up. Because the thing with our drivers as well is we add drivers throughout the year. So at the beginning of the year, as people turn of age or get their licenses, we add. So it's a smaller number at the beginning of the year, and then it adds throughout the year.
When we get to the end of the year, near the end of the year, rough estimate, how many commuters, but people that drive, just ballpark figure.
I would say less than 60 because we don't have other day parking for them.
Okay, okay. And then the other question, one of the other questions was the, the existing football field. You mentioned that was going to say for recreation. I know I believe at least Mr. Pagini had indicated to us that there was it a ZBA approval, is that correct?
Correct.
For relocation of the football field. If you could just give some insight into that, if that's something that's still being considered, if it is, what the time point for that might be, and then if it was relocated on the existing football field, would that still be recreation?
Yeah, and the reason I refer to it as an athletic field is because we do play other sports there. We also
I see them with the
frisbee and other things. So that's why we try not to. Anyways, we are still considering moving the football field, and
okay.
But that space right now will remain an athletic field.
Okay. And then just the one last thing, Mr. Pagini, again, the gentleman had presented with some height or concerns with respect to the height of the building. That's something I don't expect you to comment on right now. You've just received it, but certainly look at that when it comes time for our next meeting on this. And again, individuals that would like to comment on the application in the center, please raise your hand and come forward. Yes. How many other people do we have in the center that would like to?
Good evening, Rob Blanchard, Curtis Avenue. So I had kind of a procedural question first that I wanted to ask. When we got here and they started presenting, they said that or I think it was the landscape architect, said that they moved the building 4.5 feet, and that was because part of it was in the setback for the road. If Kevin or whoever caught that didn't catch it, and it got approved that way, is that binding? Is that stuck that way?
If it was approved that way, I believe we would, that would be an issue.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So a lot of people have talked about the parking. I don't want to rehash a lot of the stuff. You know, teenage drivers running it. You have this big line of traffic. We've seen the picture. I think it's in your packets. So you're going to have teenage drivers trying to pull in that. That intersection is dysfunctional. I'd like to add some observations as a direct neighbor on Curtis Avenue. So every day we have vans, pickup trucks, dump trucks, use Curtis Avenue, and mostly as its throughway. These are vehicles that are not servicing any of the properties that Choate owns on Curtis Avenue. So now I don't know if the school tells them to avoid the center of campus or they just do it on their own. But if they're doing it on their own, it's an indication of they don't want to go through this intersection where everybody else doesn't want to go because of the congestion and the safety issues. To that point, the other day we were coming down North Main Street, so the intersection of North Main and North. The vehicle was coming up, there was a Choate blue van, came up North Street, took a left onto North Main, drove all the way down to Curtis, which is where I live, which is why we saw the vehicle, went down Curtis Avenue and took a right, presumably to go back to the facilities building. That makes us feel like we're a de facto service road for Choate, right? Put this on top of it. All their delivery vehicles, they have all these big box trucks, Arnold Meats, school furniture, whatever. They all come up Curtis Avenue to deliver on Beaumont Avenue. Instead of using double lane Christian Street or Center Street, we're being used as a de facto service road again. So my concern is that when you look at the whole intersection, right, it's dysfunctional. We see the traffic back way up, you know, and I did see the traffic report that was done, and I saw one that was a number of years old. There's probably 6,000 cars a day using Elm Street and 6,000 cars a day using Christian Street. That's a lot of vehicles. When you congest that intersection, it has an impact on the surrounding streets. It has an impact on Curtis Avenue, it has an impact on High Street, it has an impact on North Main, it has an impact on North Street. All these streets people are avoiding that intersection because they're intentionally creating congestion there. And that's a problem for our streets. So my concern or my request would be that you look at a broader study of traffic for all the adjacent streets, because this it's no longer a problem of will this cause congestion or will that cause congestion. It's how is the function of the road as it exists now. I think it was Mr. Parent was saying that it's always congested there. So something's wrong with the intersection and something more sizable needs to be done to address this. So parking, one of the things that I was concerned about with parking was the overflow parking. They've said it's going to be up on the hill, up above Colony Hall, where they built a new Colony Hall. I raised at Wetlands Commission, and after public hearing closed, I think the town planner and Attorney Senaviva made some comments to dissuade the commission from putting a condition of approval for parking on the section of the field that's east, where it was pointed out that the creek runs underneath. So the creek runs under there, there's some surface drains. My concern is that they're going to park cars there, it's going to draw pollution, which is why I raised it at Wetlands. Going to draw pollution directly into the creek if you're putting overflow parking on that spot. So is that something that you can address as the commission, or is that something that needs to be referred back to Wetlands?
I think that's something that we could certainly discuss with the applicant as far as what plans may or may not be and what.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it would be a commitment to the environment not to park directly on top of the creek.
I suspect those, and I'll ask I suspect sometimes various seasons, those fields get somewhat wet. Is that not correct?
That's accurate, yes.
Excuse me?
What you said is accurate.
Yeah, it's accurate, so I would certainly think that you wouldn't be interested or wouldn't want to park in those, on those fields.
And it should be easy for the school to provide a commitment that they won't park
Yeah.
there. So, wanted to talk about the football field. So we've heard about potential plans to build something else. You know, I would posit that from a timeline perspective, they put the football field out. So they put the football field off after they got the variances. One Choate exec told me it was because the price was getting excessive. Another Choate executive said that it was at Zoning Board of Appeals last fall, said it was a safety issue to get the students up and down to the new football field, which is kind of odd because they own all the property and could draw paths up there. So there is a plan to do a football field. And I think that's my whole point, is that the football field's not going to be there. And they're using it kind of as an excuse to push this building closer to the road. On top of that, I think what you have is another development that you already know about that exists that should be viewed as one development with this building. We look at everything that the school does in a residential zone as piecemeal, and it completely ignores the cumulative effect of probably $150 to $200 million of development over the past 15 years. Now, Quinnipiac College and a lot of other schools have in place what's called a planned development zone. Planned development zone is used for things like education so that a 5-year plan can be created, and we can look at that cumulative impact of what they're going to do over the next 5 years. We should be doing that here. We're continually building in a residential neighborhood, educational use buildings, and we're looking at it as if these are single projects, and we all know that they're not. Okay, that's how they're presented here, but we all know that they're not. So what I would propose, okay, is something that the commission did previously. I believe the commission put a moratorium on warehouse development so that they could review the rules and make changes to those rules so that we were comfortable that we were getting what was right for the town of Wallingford. I would propose a moratorium on educational development in a residential zone so that a planned development zone could be reviewed and approved so that we can be protected with a 5-year comprehensive plan as opposed to this piecemeal. So I'll stop there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. And again, I believe the young lady in the back. And anyone else that would like to speak on this application? I believe we have one more gentleman on the left side.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Coyne. I live on Curtis Avenue, and I'll be quick because Rob said pretty much what I wanted to say about the impact of the development, the recent developments at Choate. So the more buildings that they build, the more houses that they buy, the more maintenance those things need. And those maintenance trucks use Curtis Avenue pretty much exclusively, unless it's really inconvenient. And so any traffic memo or study needs to include the impact of this development on the neighboring streets. Half of Curtis Avenue, the entire other side, is owned by Choate. Those residents are not going to see this as a problem. This side of Curtis Avenue definitely notices, and Curtis Avenue is also only parking on one side of the street. So everybody is courteous and civil and neighborly, and everybody makes an effort. Choate employees, residents, everybody makes an effort. College kids come home, there's all of a sudden 3 people that drive instead of 1, etc. But there's definitely an impact on the side streets for all this development. And I think that before we can approve more development that's going to gum up that intersection, we need to look at how is Choate using that intersection. And I'll tell you, their planned operations, they're not using it. They're using Curtis, they're using North, they're using Academy, and they're using High. And I think that as a courtesy to the residents, you need to at least consider that. The traffic memo I think, was sparse. I think it needs to be much bigger, that it's very clear that anybody that lives in the center of Wallingford or drives through Wallingford would say that that intersection can be problematic or is problematic. Recently this week, we're noticing school buses using Curtis Avenue. And I don't want to have to get into a conversation of, oh, I don't want a school bus on my street. I do, but it's just trucks up and down, up and down, up and down. It's a lot. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. And I believe the gentleman to the left, and from the looks of it, I think this will be our last member of the public who's interested in commenting on the application.
Vote 529 North Main Street, Wallingford. While Choate has been a good neighbor, which would be expected of an institution of this type, there's no reason to allow an exception for this building in this particular residential location. It is the busiest intersection on campus. There have been accidents and traffic backups at this location. There are many more suitable locations for this building on campus which are available. That's all I have to say. I'm opposed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And again, at this point in time, I don't see any other members of the public would like to comment on the application. So at this point, Mr. Pagini, do you have any comments?
It seems like with the questions that were raised, seems like it needs to be continued. I'm guessing, I don't know if the commission members would have anything specific in mind for the applicant to bring back in April, but I think, we can definitely work on.
You could just speak up a
We can work on
yeah,
specific
pull that a
aspects
little.
of what was brought up here tonight, hopefully with the applicant. I don't know if the commission wants to give those specifics now or try to have staff convey what was said here tonight.
Well, I think that from my perspective, I think all the commission members would like to see a copy of that, of the traffic, of your traffic report. We'd like to see that, at least I would, and I think other commission members, the cross-section of the garage, so when someone's coming out, we have just an idea of, what their, what someone would see. And actually, I appreciate one of the members of the public talking about just the construction, because I think at least I think was remiss just to talk a little bit about the construction sequence. I know our town planner had mentioned as far as having one entrance coming in, one entrance coming out. So I'd like to, have a presentation on that as far as the construction itself, the construction entrances, and there was some very good points made by one of the members of the public just concerning the safety, what's planned during the construction, phase, so we can get a much better or really a clear picture as far as how that's going to, how that's going to function and how that's going to be dealt with. Other commission members, suggestions, what they'd like to see? Yes, Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just to follow on to your point, actually, one of the potential conditions of approval was basically maintain and protect pedestrian traffic within public sidewalk throughout the course of construction activities. And to your point and the residents' point, there were a couple of comments in the SLR memo about how construction's going to proceed. But yes, I absolutely would like to see that expanded and really touch on the pedestrian traffic issue during construction. Some of the other comments, I think, I think the location of the building, quite honestly, is where it needs to be. It's the admission center. It's basically your stepping off point to showcase, your school grounds. And, I honestly, it's right smack dab in the middle of everything. And I couldn't pick a better location, I think, personally. Then a couple of the other residents about, the traffic around Curtis and, some of the vendors using some of the side streets. Honestly, I think that's really out of scope for this particular application. But, I think you did hear their comments, and I think it is something that, with Choate being the great neighbor and continuing to be a great neighbor, I think that is something that's, something maybe you want to look into and, see if there's things you can do to talk to the vendors and, improve some of that traffic. But again, I think that's out of scope for this particular application.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Is there any other commission members that would like to see something else from, yes, Mr. Fitzsimmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we all spoke about the fact that the commission members don't have a copy of the traffic memo from SLR dated November 5th, 2022, I do have the memo from March 8th from the Department of Engineering, where the town engineer makes reference to the meeting held with the folks from T2 Center to discuss ways to improve North Elm Street and Christian Street. Her sentence says, the preliminary discussion suggests signage and striping improvements can help improve this intersection. Then she says, again, this is being conducted separate from the subject application. However, I do feel this information would be helpful to the commission. I would ask the town planner to request the town engineer, does she have any suggested conditions of approval? Because normally we would have several and we have 0 on this. And quite frankly, based upon the information presented tonight from the applicant's representative talking about signage and striping improvements, and the question came up of who would pay, and it was the town. I'd like to see the town engineer send the memo to the commission regarding any suggested conditions. This is a special permit. This is not a right. It's a special permit. So we as the town should be able to put in conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzsimmons. Any other commission members? Okay, seeing none, obviously this is going to be continued to our next meeting, and I would entertain a motion to continue it.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to continue application 405-23 to our April 10th meeting.
We have a motion to continue. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hopefully we'll see you gentlemen next month.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, it brings us to our next order of business, which is a continuation of a special permit, fill and excavation, Hutton Street, 21 LLC, 1299 South Main Street. And again, Mr. Allenson, if you would please note all additional correspondence for the record. No, we already read it.
South Broad Street.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of...
Hang on for a second, sir.
Sure.
We're going to note all the correspondence, additional correspondence.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a memo from Aaron O'Hare to Kevin Pagini, Town Planner, dated March 8th, 2023. We have a stormwater system operations and maintenance plan received March 10th, 2023, marks revised. And we have a revised set of site plans.
All right, and before we continue, I know, Mr. Allenson, you were not at the February meeting. I'm not sure if you've had the opportunity to review all the information.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I did not have an opportunity to watch last meeting.
So in this case, Mr. Hine, if you would sit in for Mr. Allenson. I was not at the February meeting, but I did review the meeting. I read the minutes to the meeting as well as all of the items, so I feel that I'm knowledgeable on this application, so it'll be 5 gentlemen sitting here six gentlemen, excluding Mr. Allison, who will be acting on the application. So with that, you'd please introduce yourself and continue with your presentation. Well, there's six, but there's only five. I mean, there's six of us, but there's only five of us that are going to be acting on the application. I'm not good with math sometimes. Sir, if you please
Yes.
begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Carl Landolina. I'm a land use attorney with the firm of Fahey and Landolina in Windsor Locks. I'm representing the applicant tonight. As you stated, Mr. Chairman, we were here about a month ago. Just quickly, I know you have a few other things on your agenda this evening. As you may recall, either having been here or reviewed the application, this is a adaptive reuse, so to speak, of an existing property that straddles the Meriden-Wallingford town line. The existing building is a banquet facility. That banquet facility, the building actually crosses, mostly constructed in Meriden, but does cross the property line and the town line, and the building exists in Wallingford as well. On the Wallingford side, there, in addition to that, there is some associated parking. Our plan is to demolish the building that's there and install an automated car wash facility. Everything, the parking, the impervious surfaces, the drainage structures, the building, all the operations are going to be on the Meriden side of this property. As you can see, and I think to my left is Sarah Castagliola from B&L, and she'll take you through the plan if you need to see any more detail. But you can see where the town line crosses the property. Everything in the Wallingford side, the parking that's there is going to be removed, and grass and landscaping materials are going to be put in place on the Wallingford side. No buildings, no drainage structures, nothing of any kind.
Sir, just so it's a little bit easier to see if you or, I'm sorry, I forget your
Sarah.
name. Sarah.
Yeah,
Your
why don't you go
last
point
name.
that out, Sarah, sure.
Yeah, if you could just, point that out, the specific areas.
Yeah, so I'll actually flip. Here is the site as it is today. So this orange color is the existing building. This line is the town line. And so as you can see, both the building and the parking falls on both sides of the property, so in two different towns. So this plan, in comparison to today, again, the town line is right here. So the Wallingford side will have all impervious cover removed, and this front area will be reseeded with lawn seed, this rear area with conservation seed mix, and then there's a variety of plantings to the rear along the wetlands.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we are here requesting a special permit under your excavation section. Since we're not, building anything there, we are going to be removing in excess of the 100 cubic yards that are otherwise exempt. So that's the reason we're here, for that purpose only. We did receive wetlands approval on the 1st, I believe, and that should probably what the memo from Ms. O'Hare states that you've indicated is now in the record. I will tell you that the approval from wetlands did come with some 10 additional plantings that were requested by your environmental planner, so they are now part of the plan. She indicated that she wanted to see what she called a more robust landscaping plan for the Wallingford side, so that's part of the approval. And I would say that the E&S bond that they required was rather robust as well, to ensure proper controls during construction and to ensure that the landscaping and the grasses that we're planting, will take hold. So we really have nothing further for you. If you have any questions, we'd certainly be glad to answer them. But that's pretty much the plan.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Pagini, before I go to commission members, questions, comments, concerns, observations?
I think, is it possible to put maybe a little bit more landscaping along Route 5, possibly some shade trees of?
So we do have some trees proposed. There's one here, as well as some plantings in the front here, some within this rain garden. And then as far as existing plantings, there's actually a row of trees and shrubs along the southern property line right here, and as well as the northern property line that are to remain, and they're existing and will stay.
Where would you like to see additional trees, Mr. Pagini?
Probably just along the Wallingford part of Route 5, just to give a little bit of, unless the commission feels that lawn is fine, I guess it's up to the commission.
Well, frankly, Mr. Chairman, if I could be heard, we think, as indicated, that the landscaping plan that we've designed, and in addition to what's already there, which is going to be maintained, I think is satisfactory. You know, I don't know what kind of trees we'd be planting. Obviously, there's going to be signage along Route 5 on the Meriden side, so we, you know, wouldn't want to be blocking any signage that was put up.
Any commission members with any concerns, questions, any observations with respect to additional plantings, or are we satisfied what's being shown?
Mr. Chairman, I'm in favor of some street trees of an appropriate distance, similar to how we have on lower sections of Route 5.
Good. I think that's something that we'd like to see. I think that that's, if we approve this application, it can certainly be made a condition of approval, and you could work with Mr. Pagini in order to have that taken place.
Would there be more direction to Mr. Pagini as to how many, or is it going to be just left to his discretion, or what would you like to see? Is there, so we just have a better idea?
Yeah, no, I think, in my mind, I would leave that discretion to Mr. Pagini. I have a great deal of confidence in him as far as what he would recommend. I'm not sure about other commission members, but I have a great deal of confidence in him.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. And I take it that you complete your presentation,
It does,
correct?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, it's-
Commission members, questions, comments for the applicant? Mr. Cohen.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Basically, I have a question to the town planner, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
You know, the applicant mentioned, you know, you have a fairly substantial sediment erosion control bond with inland wetlands.
Yes.
And, you know, we're asking for one as well. And just, you know, just want to, do you still want to, you know, request that as a condition of approval?
Yeah, I generally do, only because we require a final landscaping bond, whereas wetlands doesn't. So I feel like it's appropriate. What I generally try to scale as to what I think that they might do. So I don't think, I didn't try to go above and beyond. I just try to keep it appropriate as far as the erosion and sediment controls are concerned.
Okay.
Could I hear what that number that he suggested is?
12,500.
Well, again, obviously, that's your decision to make. I will tell you that I was a little bit surprised by the amount imposed by inland wetlands. And one of the reasons, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, when they approved the application before, is that what you heard tonight, they were working on a very massive project, creating a lot of impervious surface, and on a 6.5 acre parcel, and they imposed an E&S bond of $15,000. For us, they doubled that. So I would like you to take that into consideration. So now we've got two separate bonds that are 4 times what's been imposed so far on a project before us on a piece of property that is 20% of the property that's going to be impacted in a previous application. I just would bring that forward for the record.
Good.
So, yeah, just to, follow on to my comments. I respect, the professional opinion of the town planner, so I will say that years ago, I was on inland wetlands, and there was development on the Wallingford side of this parcel. And in the back, there was and still is very sensitive wetlands the way it flowed, so I can understand. I get it now, Mr. Pagini, why we want this. So, again, I'm going to respect his professional opinion.
That's fine. I just wanted to put that on the record, gentlemen.
Thank
It's on
you.
the record, sir. Other commission members, any questions for the applicant? Mr. Fitzsimmons.
I just want to confirm for the record, since this is a special permit, what exactly is going to happen on the Wallingford side of this project?
Just what you heard, grass and landscaping.
So there'll be no signs? The signs will all be on the Meriden side?
There will be a sign that your wetlands or environmental planner requested, which states the mowing of the meadow area and no snow to be.
Yeah, that's the
in that
only
area.
sign. They want us to put a sign where it changes
Sure.
from lawn to meadow that says only, no mowing.
So in the grass area, we wouldn't expect to see an illuminated sign, correct?
Correct.
If there is, it'll be on the Meriden side. So there's no activity on the Wallingford side except grass growing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Only landscaping.
Landscaping.
This is a public hearing. Any members of the public would like to speak on the application, please come forward with your name and address and your comments. Seeing none, I would bring it first back to the applicant if you'd like to make any
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Pagini, any further comments?
No further comments, except to please just notify me when construction starts.
Of course. I'm sure that's one of your standard conditions anyway.
Any commission members, any final comments? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing for application 401-23.
You have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzini, Mr. Fitzsimmons. Voting begin with Mr. Hine, please.
Yes.
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 And yes, now I'd entertain a motion on the application.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve application 401-23, Hutton Street 21, LLC, 1299 South Broad Street. Special permit and site plan approval request for Hutton Street 21, LLC, located at 1299 South Broad Street, for an excavation and fill permit to move approximately 300 cubic yards of earthen material on plans entitled Site Development Plans, Mod Wash-Meriden, 1299 South Broad Street, Town of Wallingford, dated 11/18/2022, and revised to 2/23/2023, subject to the following conditions of approval. Comments from Aaron O'Hare, environmental planner, dated 3/8/2023. An erosion and sediment control bond in the amount of $12,500. 6 copies of the approved final plans forwarded to the Planning and Zoning Office. Additional plantings along Route 5 with conditions to be agreed upon between the town planner and the applicant. And lastly, that the applicant notify the town planner when construction begins.
We have a motion on the application. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. Voting beginning with Mr. Hine, please.
Yes to approve.
Yes.
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 And yes, your application's been approved. Have a good evening, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, gentlemen.
And it brings us to our next item, which is, again, a continuation of a special permit change of use for B. Kaplan, 28 South Whittlesey Avenue. Again, Mr. Parent, if you would please note all correspondence for the record, as you'll be voting on this application.
See, we're looking for Hutton Street. Okay. Okay, Exhibit 40323A, inspection report from the Wallingford Fire Department. Exhibit 40323B, memo from the Department of Engineering to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Oh, sure. Exhibit 403-23, revised site plan for 28 South Whittlesey Avenue.
And that's it.
And that is it.
Good, thank you. And like the prior application, again, Mr. Perrin will be sitting on this application. I've reviewed the minutes, I've reviewed the tape of the meeting, so while I wasn't at the last meeting, I'll be acting on this application. So with that, if you gentlemen would please introduce yourself and continue your presentation from last month.
Okay. Baruch Kaplan, 22 South Whittlesey Avenue. Our request is a change of zone for a meeting house, a religious meeting house on 28 South Whittlesey Avenue. I'm a rabbi. I have an organization called Shabbat of Wallingford. We've been here for 18 years. We've been operating on Center Street with a couple of parking spots. We purchased, I live next door. I purchased the property in 28th South Whittlesey, and we want to turn that into a religious meeting house. Last we were here, we were requested to show that we would have 8 parking spaces, which I believe we have. Additionally, I've had conversations with my neighbors just to sit down with them and say, listen, guys, I'm happy to talk. I'm here for the long haul to make things work the best way for everyone. I just want to make mention that the previous storefront that we had probably less designated spots than we will be having right now.
Thank you, sir. Commission members, any further questions for the applicant? I know one of the items that was of concern was the parking and being able to show that there was 8 parking spaces. I know we do have the map that was presented, so again, commission members with questions, additional questions for the applicant? I think at this point in time, I don't think there's any further questions from the commission members. Mr. Pagini, any comments, questions from you before we go out to the public?
I just wanted to note to the applicant that the town engineer did mention that if you do get approved for the curb cut for the driveway, you will have to replace the sidewalk. It has to be 8 inches thick, so that'll be a condition of approval.
Okay.
Again, this is a public hearing. Members of the public like to speak on the application, please come forward, name and address with your comments. Seeing none, I'd bring it back to the applicant. Any further comments that you'd like to make? You're certainly not compelled to make any more. I think it's a rather brief presentation.
I appreciate the fact that you guys are still sitting here at this time. Kudos to you.
So at this point in time, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing for application 403-23.
We have a second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. Voting beginning with Mr. Hine, please.
Yes.
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 And yes. Now I'd entertain a motion on the application.
Before I make the motion, I just wanted to follow up with Mr. Pagini on, I really didn't catch the other condition you suggested. I see the note from Department of Engineering, but I'm stuck for what you wanted as far as the condition of approval.
It's on there. It's just that the applicant obtains the street excavation permit from the town engineering department, which will require the sidewalk just to be 8 inches
Okay,
thick.
all right. Thank you. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve application 403-23, 28 South Whittlesey Avenue, special permit, change of use. Let me read the right thing here. Special permit and site plan approval request for Kaplan to convert a multifamily residential building to a religious assembly center located at 28 South Whittlesey Avenue on residential building on plans entitled Property Survey dated 9/28/2022 and revised to 3/3/2023, subject to the following conditions of approval. Comments from the Fire Marshal's Office dated 1/25/2023. Comments in interoffice memorandum from Senior Engineer Scott Shipman to the Planning and Zoning Department dated 2/1/2023. Comments from Allison Kapuscinski, Town Engineer, dated 3/9/2023. Number 4, that the applicant obtains a street excavation permit from the Town Engineering Department, which will require replacing the sidewalk at the proposed driveway location to be 8 inches thick, and 6 copies of the approved final plans forwarded to the Planning and Zoning Office.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. Voting beginning again with Mr. Hine, please.
Yes to approve.
Yes.
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 And yes, your application's been approved. Have a good evening, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen.
You're welcome. Brings us to our next item. It's a special permit, outside storage, inside retail, Iron Horse Equipment, 71 South Turnpike Road. And again, Mr. Allenson, if you would please read the legal notice and note all correspondence for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Number 404-23, special permit request for Iron Horse Equipment for outside sales of farm/related equipment at 71 South Turnpike Road, -CB40 zone. We've had an inspection report from the Wallingford Fire Department. Inspection date February 17th, 2023. An inspection report from the Wallingford Fire Department dated February 28th, 2023, and a revised set of site plans dated receipt February 24th, 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Allenson. If the applicant and/or its representative would please introduce themselves and begin their presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For your record, my name is Dennis Senaviva, attorney with Senaviva Law Firm, Meriden. I represent the applicant who's to my left, Ben Fibriello, the owner-applicant of Iron Horse Equipment. To his left, Chris Giuliano, the project engineer, who will be making the presentation up at the easel. The property, as you know, is 2.44 acres in size. It's a commercial piece of land zone CB40. It's located on the northeasterly corner of South Turnpike Road and Cook Hill Road. It is developed with a 26,285 square foot commercial building. Iron Horse Equipment occupies almost 8,000 square feet on the South Turnpike easterly portion of the building. The applicant proposes to expand its business operation to an outside sales area, primarily along the north side of the building. Chris will show that to you in just a second. It's about 3,300 square feet in size. The application, Mr. Chairman, I'm sure it's somewhat familiar to the members, at least the property. This application follows up discussions that you had with the applicant back in February. There were some discussions about the nature of the operation, and I think there was a comment about, I think it was Commissioner Allenson who indicated that under Section 4.6D, subsection 10 of your regulations required a special permit is the proper process for outside sales, and not and the distinction between outside sales and outside storage that was being discussed last time. So thus the application is presented as a special permit. And again, Chris is going to go through the particulars, and then Ben is here to talk about, he's got some letters in support. I'm going to offer those, Mr. Chairman, and if you have any questions about his operation. Thank you.
Good evening. For the record, Christopher Giuliano, licensed surveyor and professional engineer with the firm of Giuliano Associates. I know all the commissioners are familiar with the property and with the application from last time. I know we had a very detailed discussion about outdoor sales, outdoor storage, and at the time, the main reason that the applicant was in front of you is that there was equipment in various parts of the parking lot. And since that time, and I hope the commission can appreciate this, the site has been cleaned up, that extra equipment has been removed off the site. And now, at this point in time, the applicant would like to do some outdoor sales area. And what we've done is we've designated an area in green, which is off the north side of the building. And actually, the first set of plans showed an area also on the easterly side of the building, with the latest revision showing this in blue because the town planner requested that be considered overflow. For those times when the applicant has new equipment coming in, needs a place to unload it for short term, and then can adjust his equipment accordingly, move stuff inside, move stuff outside. So what I've done is I've calculated the area, the total area that will be used for outdoor sales. It's roughly about 3,300 square feet. The daily use area, which is in green, would total almost 2,200 square feet, and the overflow area, just a little over 1,100 square feet. And this will allow the applicant to be able to display various equipment, the lawn mowers, the snow blowers that he does sell, and that so anyone who's coming to the site or driving by can actually see what he sells. It's very simple, not much different than the plan that we had proposed to you last year at some point. So with that, I'll turn it back to the commission if you have any specific questions about what I'm displaying.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, just before the questions, I just wanted to point out, please, that one of the things that Chris has done too is respond to the comments from your fire marshal about expanding the distance between the outside sales area so that there was adequate ability for fire trucks and other emergency vehicles to get through the site.
Commission members with questions for the applicant. Yes, Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just a couple quick questions. This outdoor sales area, well, first question is it going to be screened in, fenced in, visible from, South Turnpike?
So at this time,
What's it going to look like?
we plan on leaving it open. Predominantly, it will be tractors, farm tractors that will be parked out there. So it's something that's about the size of a car, arguably, in some cases. So at this time, we didn't feel that it needed to be screened in. The fire department also asked if we could not screen it in because it would go and hinder their ability to access the building in case of an emergency.
Okay. And I assume these will remain outside, basically all the time, overnight, until the season ends?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess getting back to the question as far as having it fenced in, screened, or something like that. I appreciate the comments from the fire marshal, but given some of the history on the property and some of the issues that we dealt with before, I would be concerned that perhaps in error or an oversight, some of the equipment is stored beyond the area that's approved. And I think that would be then become very difficult for, our, if there were some issues there, be difficult for our zoning enforcement officer, our town planner to come out and say, okay, is this within the area or not in the area? Again, I appreciate the fact with the fire marshal, he had cut back some of that storage area so there's proper proper space for emergency vehicles. But without some delineation, I don't see how one could have any confidence that in fact that's going to, that everything is going to stay within what's been delineated on the plan. So that's an issue of concern that I have.
I think that's a fair comment, Mr. Chairman, and as I understand it, and Ben can tell me if I'm wrong, but my understanding was that this was going to be, there would be markings on the ground, that's something that's been discussed with the landlord, so that this is an area that you could, anyone, Amy, Tori, anyone could go to the site and determine whether or not there was compliance, because the specific area would be identified by markings on the pavement in that location, and to your point, so that we know that there is compliance. And that would be important, I think, for the town and also for my client.
Yeah, that's what I would like to see, just so that's delineated, so we know if there is a potential issue, not saying that there would be, but if there was, that it would be very easy to see if it's in compliance or not in compliance. Other commission members, comments? Seeing none, Mr. Pagini, any comments before I go out to the public?
No, I did just put in the conditions of approval that I'd like to just see the dumpsters moved to the back if possible, and screened. But that's pretty much all I have.
Okay. All right, again, at this point in time, this is a public hearing. Any members of the public would like to speak on the application, please come forward and name and address. Seeing none, bring it back to the applicant if you'd like to make any final comments.
I'd like to argue with the public, but not tonight. Mr. Chairman, I did want to present 3 letters, just to be for your record. I'm going to present those to you. And then I did go to Ben's site, and I know that Mr. Pagini had asked for some pictures of showing some of the products, and I noticed that on his website it showed the type of tractors that are involved. These are large vehicles, as he points out. So, again, with that highlighted area, designated area on the outside, the size of the vehicles, I think it'll be fairly simple to determine compliance.
Okay. Thank you. At this point in time, if there's no further comments from the applicant, no further questions from commission members, I entertain a motion to close our public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing for application for 404-23.
Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. Voting beginning with Mr. Cohan, please.
Yes.
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 And yes, now I'd entertain a motion on the application.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve application 404-23, Iron Horse Equipment, 71 South Turnpike Road, special permit and site plan approval request to allow outdoor sales of farm and related equipment at 71 South Turnpike Road on plans entitled Improvement Location Survey, Iron Horse Equipment Proposed Outdoor Sales Area, dated 1/30/2023, and revised to 2/24/2023, subject to the following conditions of approval. Number 1, comments from the Fire Marshal's Office dated 2/21/2023. Number 2, that the outdoor sales area as depicted on the site plan is limited to the side of the building and that the front area remains for inventory overflow only. Number 3, that all other aspects of the business operation remain indoors and that the dumpsters visible off of Cook Hill Road are moved to the back of the property and properly screened. Number 4, 6 copies of the approved final plans forwarded to the Planning and Zoning Office. And the last one, number 5, that the outdoor sales area pavement be marked as such.
We have a motion on the application. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. Voting beginning with Mr. Cohan.
Yes.
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 And yes, your application has been approved. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And would you mind just giving this to Mr. Pagini, please? And it brings us to our final public hearing of the night. It's a map amendment from R18 to DD40 for S. Elmsky. I'm sorry if I pronounced the name wrong. It's on 10 Mansion Road. Again, the applicant's representative come forward to begin preparing for the presentation. And Mr. Allenson, if you would read the legal notice and note all correspondence for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Number 501-23, zoning map amendment for 10 Mansion Road to change the zoning from R18 residential to DD40 design district. We have an inspection report from the Wallingford Fire Department dated February 17th, 2023. An interdepartmental referral from our environmental planner, date of receipt February 15th, 2023. And I believe that is all.
Thank you, Mr. Allenson. If the applicant and/or its representative please introduce themselves and begin their presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For your record, my name is Dennis Senaviva. I'm an attorney with the Senaviva Law Firm in Meriden. To my left is Shalom Ilkes, who is the owner of the property. At the easel is Chris Giuliano, our project engineer. The property is involved as a 25,564 square foot parcel of land located west of a 1.57 acre piece, which doesn't have an address. It's 0 South Turnpike Road, according to the assessor's card. And that's also owned by the same owner. Now, it's important to note, and Chris will be pointing that out during his portion of the presentation, but that abutting parcel on the northwesterly corner of South Turnpike Road and Mansion Road is zoned DD40. It's currently vacant. Again, it's described without an address. This parcel is zoned R18 currently. Across the street is, if you've driven by, I'm sure you have, you'll notice that there's a commercial garage, although the property at 7 Mansion is zoned R18, perhaps appropriate for a zone change of itself. If granted, the owner intends to merge this lot at 10 Mansion Road with the vacant parcel on the corner of South Turnpike. The plan is to develop the parcel. We would be here before you, hopefully in a month or so, again with Mr. Giuliano, and with a restaurant-based operation. So the request is to change the zone for this parcel to DD40, merge it with the easterly abutting parcel. Once merged, we'll be before you with an application. The properties at 0 South Turnpike Road, the abutting parcel across the street at 159 South Turnpike Road, are zoned DD40, leaving this triangular piece as sort of an outlier. And the zone change, if permitted, and merged with the, again, the 0 South Turnpike Road property, will create a site that has development potentials. I think if you look at a memo that came in from the environmental planner, and I'm citing her, which is unusual for me, but the site, she points out that the site limitations on the existing vacant parcel, which is already zoned DD40, are substantial. There's water courses, there's some significant grade issues, and it leaves a very little area of development. Again, Chris is going to point that out in the presentation. So really, without merging this parcel, this contiguous parcel, with that piece, it makes development of your corner lot, you know, you can put something very small, but it would be very, it wouldn't be its highest and best use, Mr. Chair, and that's why we're here tonight. So I'm going to turn that over to Chris, and he can show you what I've been talking about.
Okay, thank you. For the record, Christopher Giuliano, licensed land surveyor and professional engineer with the firm Giuliano Associates. Basically, to orient everyone, over on the right side of the map is South Turnpike Road. To the bottom of the map is Mansion Road. Basically, as Dennis pointed out, we have an existing parcel which is either 0 Mansion Road or 8 Mansion Road, depending upon what records you check, and then the existing residential property, which is 10 Mansion Road, which is this odd triangular shape. The zone line where the DD40 starts runs down the middle of South Turnpike Road, and the other zone line for the boundary of the DD40 before it turns into residential is roughly 255 feet off the center line of the road. So you can see that it kind of runs through the residential property. I believe, and I'm going out on kind of a limb here, that when this property was subdivided, and I think it was done possibly back in the 80s, this was all DD40.
2003.
Thank you. Even earlier than I thought, or later than I thought. So this was subdivided, and then this property went, this little triangular piece went from DD40 to R18. So basically what we're wanting to do is flip it back, make it a more usable piece. And as Attorney Senaviva said, and was kind of brought up by the environmental planner, the undeveloped portion does have some topographic issues. We have basically a drainage way that runs through the property where we have a ravine. We have a nice knob here of like trap rock, and then it drops back down to South Turnpike. So to be able to really develop this, it makes sense to combine these two properties together so that the future applicant can use the existing dwelling and existing garage for their restaurant concept and be able to do some filling on this side for parking. That would probably be the best use. Now, with respect to the zone change, I know in your packets we had to put together the zone change map for all the properties within 500 feet. And there's a lot of different zones going on in the area, a lot of different things happening. But just to point out, at the southwest corner of Mansion Road and South Turnpike is the credit union. This R18 parcel right here is the commercial electrician. We have a couple of the HOD development to the north, the Heritage Woods, Brentwood Village around. So we have a lot of condominiums in the area, a little bit of single-family residential to the west, and then across from South Turnpike is CB40 zone. We have the dentist, periodontics. We also have the ENT facility here, and then a little bit further to the south, we actually have the Redwood Flea Market. So there's a conglomerate of different things happening in this area, and this is actually what I think is a very good location for a future eatery because there's a lot of residential around, there's enough commercial around to support it as well. I think the closest eatery to this would be Serafino's to the north. So it is a good location for that, and once the two properties get combined and I do my job on it, it'll be a nice site plan to bring back to you within 4 to 6 weeks. So.
Thank you.
That's our presentation, Mr. Chair.
Commission members with any comments? I guess my only comment is I know sometimes when we look for zone changes, we say, gee, is this just spot zoning? But in this particular case, I mean, I'm looking at the property that would be to the south, I guess. And, you know, that's the DD40. So at least in my mind, I look at that this would be a kind of a logical just continuation of, you know, of that zone. And given what's, you know, what's in the general area and what Mr. Giuliano mentioned, the various zoning that's there right now, I find a request, certainly I could support the request. Any commission members?
I would agree, Mr. Chairman. It makes sense.
That being said, this is a public hearing. Well, before I go out, Mr. Pagini, any comments?
I just want to say, I think even if it is extended to the parcel, it looks like there's some topographic kind of site limitations on the western portion of the property. So I think even if you do extend it to about that residential line, I don't think there will be too many conflicts at least.
Good. Again, this is a public hearing. Any members of the public like to speak on the application? Name and address. Seeing none, I take it you probably have no further comments.
I think we're good, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, at this point in time, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing for application 501-23.
Second.
We have a second, voting beginning with Mr. Mr. Cohan to close the public hearing.
Yes.
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 And yes, at this point in time, I entertain a motion on the application.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve a zoning map amendment, Elmke's 10 Mansion Road, application 501-23, zoning map amendment, request to change the remainder of the property at 10 Mansion Road from R18 to DD40 because of the best use of the combined properties, the future combined properties.
We have a motion on the application. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. Voting beginning with Mr. Cohan, please.
Yes.
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 And yes, your application's been approved. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
And that being said, we're bound to reports of officers and staff, so Mr. Pagini, if you would please take over.
So we did review the annual report while Chairman was on vacation, but we did not vote on it, so we do have to vote on accepting the annual report.
If I could just make just one comment and perhaps one small addition, if I'm correct, on the third paragraph that begins with the majority of 2022.
Yeah, I think that was correct. I think I wanted to get a
When we get
timeline.
No, but when we, that's the paragraph that begins with. But the last sentence,
Oh,
you know,
okay.
approvals for the new commercial uses, you listed, but correct me if I'm wrong, we also approved a car wash on Route 5, so I think that should be included.
I think it may have still been in litigation at the time. I may have written it.
Well, we approved it.
I wasn't sure, yeah.
I mean, whether it was in litigation or not, it
Right.
was approved. So I would just suggest that be,
Okay.
that be included. So with that change, I take it we need a motion, is that correct, to approve this?
Yep.
I'd entertain a motion, and hopefully with the amendment to include car wash.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Planning and Zoning Annual Report 2022 with the amended addition of the car wash approval.
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. Voting beginning with Mr. Cohan.
Yes.
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 And yes. Continuing on.
Administrative approvals, any questions on those? If not, ZBA decisions and the ZBA notice.
Any commission members with any questions on first the decisions, and then if none, as far as notices for the next meeting? And I see none.
Just another general comment. I just got notice today that this room may be taken up for our April hearing due to budget meetings. So we may have to find a different venue, especially with the Choate application for that. So I'll look at possibly the hubcap, unless there's another suggestion.
Well, commission members with any suggestions? Hubcap, 390, 315, that's a, probably, well, you think that's tight or have just as much space as hubcap?
Well, they have plenty, yeah.
Yeah.
315 seems a little close, but I'm okay with that.
So 315 then?
Yeah, if everybody's good on 315.
And for the workshop on March 29th, I haven't heard back from every commission member, but is that, if I set that date, can you make that? March 29th.
Everybody, it's good for me, I'm not sure if other.
It works.
All right, I will set that date then, and I will get out an agenda.
Good. That's it, Mr. Pacini?
Yes, that is it.
Good. So at this point in time, if there's no other business coming before us, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the March 13th Planning and Zoning meeting.
Do I have a second? Second. Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We're adjourned. Thank you very much.